You spoke to the dark and fleshed out the wonder of the light. And as you speak, your voice, come on, lift it loud. If the stars were made to worship, so will I. I can creation sings your praises, so will I. All right. So will I. So God of your promise, you don't speak in vain, you syllable into your voice. And for once you have spoken, all nature and science, they follow the sound of your voice. Oh, and as you speak, oh, high rebellion, creatures catch their breath. They're evolving in pursuit of what you said. If it all reveals your nature, so will I. I can see your heart in everything you say. Every pain is scars, the canvas of your grace. If creation still obeys you, so will I. Come on, let's give him praise for this morning, 9 o'clock. Lift up his name, come on.
It's the anti-checker.
We will return to your scheduled programming shortly, or we are currently experiencing technical difficulty.
You know what? Hate me because I cheat, because I won.
I forgot to turn that off, but yes, Bird of Prey 5, confirmed cheater and good friend to the channel. So, yes. I'll turn that off because we don't need that come up later. Good to see you guys. Michael J. Crawford, good morning, good Sunday morning to all of you. Probably my second to last Sunday morning on this schedule, so I don't know exactly what time I will be streaming 2 weeks from today because I'll be returning to work a week from tomorrow, and I don't know at all what my work schedule is going to be. It could be literally anything except for we don't do graveyard shifts anymore. So I genuinely have no idea what I'm going to be doing. But I wanted to, before I get into the chat, and I'll get into the chat in just a minute here, but one thing we do twice a year at the church that I attend, that you just saw the singing at, is what's called a vision service. Now, many churches, for those of you who don't go to church, just so you guys understand the basic structure of a church, most churches have what's called a board of directors. The board of directors usually determines the budget and everything, and then the church is supposed to have an annual budget meeting, and what they do is they invite all the membership of the church to attend a budgetary meeting for a final vote, or just basically to just present this is what we're doing so that they're aware. And that budgetary meeting, very few people actually go to because it's boring, it's dry, and it's usually at an inconvenient time. So that's just kind of how most churches do it. Our church does it a little differently. Twice a year, we do what's called a vision service, and that is they do one in January and usually one around September. The one in January is to say, this is what we're looking to do this year. The one in September is usually, this is how we've done so far and where we think we'll be by the end of the year. And we did that yesterday, last night, and of course this morning for the Sunday morning attendees is the Vision Service weekend, and they talk about, well, here's where the growth is, here's where the numbers are, and in that they lay it all out as far as the money that they collect and how they spend it. So like in 2019, the budget, now keep in mind ours is a fairly large church, and the budget was based on $4 million. That's how much they were expecting to collect from the attendees. They ended up collecting 4.8 million, and so then they show you where any excess goes and all that. One thing that we're trying to do as a church is make sure that we're debt free, so we're paying off our mortgage quickly. Instead of taking 20 years to pay off the mortgage, we will have the mortgage paid off in 4, and because we're pumping everything we can into paying it off in order to make sure that we free up any giving to pass on to the community. We still give away a ton of money. Our church gave away upwards of $1 million last year to various nonprofits, as well as benevolence to people that just have a need in their life. And I will tell you, they helped us out a little bit last year. So a little bit of that budget went towards us. So what does this all have to do with you? Not a whole lot directly, except that I wanted to kind of be as open and transparent with you guys. Now, I don't have a budget to present to you as far as what we've done so far, but I want to kind of share my vision as far as the channels and where I want to go. And then probably later this year, I'll do that again to kind of show where we're at. So consider this the official vision meeting service, whatever, for the Rational Roundtable / Anti-Trekker channels. So number one, obviously the Anti-Trekker channel has been growing nicely. The Rational Roundtable channel, not really growing, but just kind of re-establishing itself right now. And so both channels, I think, have a positive future. I just checked the numbers, and I need to get to 4,000 hours within a 12-month period of viewership in order to monetize the Rational Roundtable channel. That would make it so that, like, you guys can leave super chats, or that there can be ads on the channel to help feed the budget of the Anti-Trekker channel. We're at 1,000 of those 4,000 right now, so we're a quarter of the way there. That's a good sign, because I've only been doing these church services for a couple of months, and so I'm very confident that within the next few months we'll hit that 4,000 mark, and that will help add to the budget. Obviously, as many of you guys know, Mr. Miles is editing some of the videos on the Anti-Trekker channel, not all of the videos. However, and again, in the spirit of transparency, just so you guys know, the ad revenue that comes in on those videos, on the videos that Mr. Miles actually puts together for me, he will get the lion's share of that ad revenue. And so to the tune of, I think, 65% at a base level, and it can go up from there depending on what he does. And so that's basically because I think that when Mr. Miles puts in that much work, he deserves to get, he's basically on equal footing with me as far as, ownership of those videos and monetization of those videos. Because what he doesn't get is honestly mostly going towards the channel anyway. Then we also want to do things like get better equipment for the channels. I want to get Mr. Miles a full-on editing computer as well. He's got a decent computer right now that he's working with. Thank you to those that donated to the computer that he currently has. That's awesome that you guys did that, but I want to get him a real editing computer, and those things are not cheap. So it's probably not going to be this year, but more like next year, maybe, before we can do that. As far on my side, same thing. I want to get a more a professional level editing suite here for doing my stuff. Assuming that, and my biggest fear right now, I'll be honest with you, is that the arthritis is getting worse. I can feel the difference between now and just a couple of months ago. And that scares me a little bit because it's getting to where it's physically uncomfortable for me to edit videos. Like when I move the mouse around and try to do a lot of precision motion with the mouse and type a lot of stuff on the keyboard, it is actually getting physically painful. And I can't take arthritis medication for it because of my kidney problems. And so it's just one of those, what am I going to do? Don't know. But that's just one of the things that an obstacle that I have to deal with. Hopefully, if the channel does continue to grow, I can get more people to help. You know, that, and so because then the more people that we have able to help with this stuff, then the less I actually have to physically do, and that will make things go a lot smoother. So where we are right now, I don't know if we crossed 13,400 yet, but that's right about where we were as of last night. As far as subscribers, we're still hovering at about 2,300 subscribers on this channel, and I'm excited. I'm really excited about where the channel is going. Even though Bird of Prey is trying to sleep through this, screw you, Bird. Also, speaking of Bird of Prey and others, I want to continue to, Bird of Prey does he does all the website stuff. I want to start paying him there, but we got to get the incoming support to the channel a little bit more before I can afford to do that. Because right now, we're they're barely paying our bills as it is. So yeah. So that's kind of where we're at. I just wanted to cover that with you guys to let you know and to just be open and transparent. Yes, I do want to make a living out of this. I'm not going to lie. And when I call myself a greedy bastard, I'm kidding around. But at the same time, ultimately that's the goal. Now, that wasn't why I started the channel. I started the channel to voice my opinions as far as the Anti-Trekker channel. I started the channel to voice my opinions about Star Trek, Star Wars, stuff like that. When it actually started to take off, I was like, holy crap, I could actually make a living at this if I put a little extra work into it. And so that's where the focus became at that point. I still love doing it. I still do it out of love. I wouldn't do it if I didn't love it. But that's just an end goal now, which I didn't have when I first started the channel. So now to the chat we will go and stay for the foreseeable future here. Schromer is first in the house, says good. Greetings, Rational Roundtable. How you doing? Shomer also says, in greetings to fellow nerds. Carlo says hi. Jeff says, good morning, Rational Roundtable, a.k.a. Anti-Trekker. And Bird of Prey says, kapla, as usual. Chris says, here. Jeff says, good morning. Bird says, morning. Dan says, afternoon, because Dan is probably not in the United States. Jeff says, afternoon. And then Jeff says hi to Chris. Dan says thanks. Jeff says hi to Carlo. I gotta say, I love all this back and forth stuff. I love the fact that you guys are talking to each other as much as you talk to me. That is so freaking awesome. And Mr. Miles is saying, oh wow, I got a greeting. Let's see, the chat jumped, so let me get back. All right, so Schromer says, hail Kuroga, the power of the god Emperor Bird of Prey prevented Rational Reigns from damaging the re-education center / propaganda called it prison. Well, actually, that's not true. We did, in fact, do significant damage to the re-education center in Kuroga. And we will completely destroy it in the not-too-distant future. So, yeah. Carlos said, I don't like when people say science disproves God. It can help explain the method used or our understanding of God. Thoughts? Well, that's when people say stuff like that, it's as ignorant as when some Christians will say science proves God, right? You cannot prove or disprove the divine. It's simply not possible. Science cannot disprove God because science doesn't work in a supernatural realm. Science also cannot prove God because science doesn't work in a supernatural realm. So science and supernatural ideas just they can't cancel each other out because they're not the same thing. It's like apples. It really is an apples and oranges kind of thing. Science is the very effective mechanism to understanding how the universe works, how the world works, if you will. Why is it that every time I drop something, it falls to the ground? Why is it that, I can see certain shades of light, but not others? Why is it that, the plants are green? Why is the sky blue? Why is water wet? That's all science, and it's really cool stuff, and I love it. Particularly, like, there's different fields in science. I happen to be a big fan of astrophysics. I love the universe, right? I love cosmology. Like Dr. Alex, I'm so jealous of Dr. Alex. If my life went the way I wanted it to when I was a kid, I would have the same job Dr. Alex has. But that's I'm not going to give a sob story about me. It's just that didn't work out. So I think that the people have this misplaced idea that they're completely incompatible. And what happens is it all boils down to dogmatism. Dogmatism is the biggest enemy of both science and scripture. Dogmatism is what's led us to the creation versus evolution debate. Because dogmatism is also where it's like where people think that because there's a scientific theory that may explain the creation of the universe without God, therefore that proves God doesn't exist. Dogmatism is the enemy of truth, on both sides of the aisle, for the metaphysical or theological, and for the physical or scientific. Right, dogmatism is the enemy of both of those things, and that's unfortunately where the conflict comes in. Dogmatism is exactly what makes people think that one proves or disproves the other. And Bird of Prey talking about how he may doze off. Yeah, you're not allowed to sleep, Bird. Trust, it says, Rational Roundtable, good morning, sir. Hope you're having a good one. So far, so good. I actually was, while I was getting ready for doing this, I was watching a little bit of Echo Base Network's documentary on the sequel series. I haven't gotten all through it, the Star Wars sequel series. I haven't gotten all the way through it. I'm looking forward to it, but I'm actually interested to see how it works out. I know that I recorded a little bit for them for that documentary. I haven't seen any of the footage of me in it yet, so I don't know if I'm going to end up on the cutting room floor, if I'm actually in it, but I still think it's interesting. It's narrated by Doomcock without the voice changer. It's his natural voice, which he has a great voice. So I highly recommend it. Echo Base Network. If you haven't seen their channel and you're a Star Wars fan, you owe it to yourself to check out their channel. Dan says, you have more than one channel, so you're a network. Well, actually, you could say that. I mean, I actually technically have 3 channels as of right now. Michael Crawford is the parent channel. Don't bother subscribing to Michael Crawford. I don't post any content there. That was just the channel that is created by the Google account that I have. Then Anti-Trekker and Rational Roundtable are both channels owned by Michael Crawford. They're linked to that Michael Crawford channel. And Anti-Trekker being, of course, the main channel, if you will. I'm considering doing a 3rd channel, like one just for live streams, if the Anti-Trekker channel grows to a significant point to where that would be beneficial to do. That may be in the future, and possibly, and so yeah, there's a lot going on there, but we'll talk more about that depending on how things go this year. Surf says 4,000 stream hours or 4,000 watch hours. It's 4,000 watch hours, and I'm at a little over 1,000. And so we're a quarter of the way there. So it doesn't matter. Like if I stream for 1 hour and 10 people watch it, that's 10 hours. McClunky says, Aberjam, good to see you, Aberjam, that you haven't died in your horrible prison cell yet. We will liberate you. Hashtag free Aberjam. Schromer says, Roundtable, doing some work about the house, just listening. That's okay, Schromer. You are my friend, and you are welcome to listen. Just because you can't answer, well, that's okay. Mr. Lundell says, got arthritis. WD-40 works wonders on those squeaky, rusty joints. I wish that were the case. And my biggest problem with the arthritis is, and that's been kind of a root cause for a lot of the problems I've been dealing with. The reason I had to get the knee surgery is because of the arthritis. But the big problem with my arthritis is that I can't take arthritis medication. Arthritis medication is generally anti-inflammatories, and anti-inflammatories are hard on your kidneys, and I suffered kidney failure a couple of years back, and so I can't take, not total failure, like my kidneys dropped down to like 40%, so I can't take any anti-inflammatories. I'm simply not allowed to. And because if I do, that can exacerbate the kidney problems I've had. The only time I can take anti-inflammatories is if it's like a life or death situation. And so that's just something that I have to deal with. And I have no idea what was that. See if it's important. Hold on a second. Oh man, I can't type. It's too early. Let's see. All right, Valor says, was going to, whoa, and there goes the chat jumping on me because I'm so far, was going to ask how you were doing, join stream when you're answering the question. Well, see, I psychically knew you were going to do that. Jeff says, I would get Mr. Miles a real deal editing computer if I had the means, as well as all the other equipment you need. Just need to win that lottery. I understand, Jeff, and I appreciate that. I know you're not alone with that sentiment. But here's the thing. I don't want to put anybody out to do that, because I understand, this stuff is, like a good editing computer that would fit our needs, especially for the level of stuff Mr. Miles likes to do. We're probably talking in the order between $5,000 and $10,000. It's not a cheap thing, but it'll definitely be worth the investment once we get to that point. But for now, we'll make do with what we've got, and Mr. Miles has a decent rig that he's using, way better than his old one. Sorry, my allergies are horrible today, and so he's getting by. Don't worry. And Mr. Miles says, "Get me a Soon type Android." Sure, I'll do that. Abraham says, "Of course we talk to each other." And Trigger, who'd want to talk to you? Wow, really? I'm trying to free you from your prison hell, and that's what you're saying? I love it. Dan says, YouTube has some features that they give people when their channels have grown, but they give me some of those features first. I could use them to make my channel grow. Yeah, that's actually kind of an annoying thing. Things like super chats, like how does Google benefit by holding back super chat ability from smaller channels? They don't. Like if I'm on a DJ stream and I want to super chat him a couple of bucks, why can't I? It doesn't make any sense. And in fact, it hurts Google, because a lot of these smaller channels like DJ will set up StreamYards accounts and stuff so that you can super chat that way, and then Google doesn't get any money out of it. So it's actually kind of stupid for them. Then you have, and same thing with memberships and stuff like that. And yes, people could use the community tab that some people get, some people don't. And all that stuff to grow the channel. There is no reason to hold back on the features of the channel. Let's see. Mama Prey says these gloves are great at reducing arthritis pain in her hands so much she stopped needing the aspirin. Oh, really? Well, let me take a look at that. I'll check those out. I have not heard of those, so I will check into those. I feel weird with gloves on, I'll be honest with you, but if it actually helped with the pain, I would definitely do it. So they're compression gloves. All right. That might actually work, but I'll check them out. And yeah, how much are they? Of course I can't. They're not too expensive. All right, and so let's see. Carlos, I have a plan to be out of debt by the end of the year. Cycle of always owing money is too depressing, and it's hard to get anywhere. It's way too much of a risk. I agree. It's going to take me a few years to get out of debt, but that's if the channel does continue to grow, that's where my share of the revenue is going to go. It's to get me out of debt. So that, because we got a mortgage, I owe some back taxes. I'm not going to lie, it's not something I'm proud of, but I'm just kind of stuck there. And so, yeah, I'm definitely want to get out from under that debt. It's horrible. Good afternoon from Slovakia. Hey, Yosef. The audience reflects the channel owner. I love this community. Enjoyed yesterday's stream extremely. I'm glad to hear that. And you know what? That's the thing. I think that we do have a strong sense of community, and I'm very, very proud of that fact. I love the fact that we support each other, we love each other, and sometimes we fight each other like family, but not like enemies. And I do love that fact. And so Aberjam says, God created the universe, therefore he created science, and the scriptures say it all points to him. Some are just too blinkered to see it. I think there's some truth to, that's the funny thing is that many especially if you go back a few centuries, many people got into science in order to understand God better. Now people go into science to disprove God. Kind of ironic. I do think that despite the fact that it's not how he intended it, and despite the fact that he, after that, basically became out and out atheist, Stephen Hawking was absolutely correct when he talked about that if they had a grand unified theory that could explain everything in the universe, basically merging relativity with quantum mechanics, if they actually had a theory that could do that and everything, that they could closer understand the mind of God. And I think that there's truth in that. The problem is that the very scientists that say stuff like that don't believe it. Trek 95 says, you were in it a bit. Not 100% sure what you mean there. Aberjam is saying hi to Correct 95. Bird of Prey put in the Echo Base channel link. Thank you, Bird. You should check them out. And also to the sequel trilogy documentary that was just released. Alexander says, here for 15 minutes I have no meeting today. All right, Alexander. Well, have a good meeting, my friend. Aberjan says, forgive my harsh words. I'm thinking of developing Stockholm Syndrome. Hashtag free Aberjam. I understand, but don't develop Stockholm Syndrome, Aberjam. We'll get you out of there, my friend. Don't forget to show the like button. Some love, guys. Hey, yeah, absolutely. That does help more people that watch. That increases those view hours. Have you been getting better sleep yet? Thank you for asking that, Carlo. I actually have. I gotta say, having the CPAP machine has worked wonders for my sleep. I feel more, and last night was actually the first time I was able to almost sleep through the night. And so I'm the pain still gets me, still wakes me up every now and then, but yeah, it's night and day, man. I feel so much more rested with the new CPAP machine. And boy, have CPAP machines improved, I will tell you, because my old one was about a decade old, and just the way that the new ones work with their dynamic systems where they can detect CPAP, by the way, for those of you that don't know, if you've ever worn one, it means continuous positive air, continuous positive air pressure. And that basically means that it pushes air up your nose, basically, to keep you from snoring and to keep you from basically blocking your own your oxygen supply. And that's actually a very bad thing that a lot of people suffer from. And that's what sleep apnea is all about. So when you get a CPAP machine, it's helping you breathe, basically. When you sleep, it prevents you from snoring. You get more air into your lungs, you get more oxygen to your brain, and it allows your brain to get its proper rest. And so I still am suffering from sleep deprivation to a certain extent, because you don't just cure it by getting one good night's sleep. It takes a while to get back into it, but I'm beginning to feel the positive effects. Have you had a problem with medical prescriptions and the handwriting on it can't be read? Well, I can never read the medical prescriptions. I don't know how anybody does. I just bought a vintage Star Trek The Motion Picture Mr. Spock action figure, my Mego 1979. I wanted to have it back for a long time. That's very cool. Oh, by the way, since you're here, Alexander, I did get this from you. So let's take a look at what you sent here. I'm sure it's going to be something as crazy as the Barbie and the Rock and Royals. you nut. So that's right. So Alexander has sent me a Rose Tico action figure. That's right. Rose Tico from The Force Awakens action figure. Mint in the box. Oh, Alexander, you are a nut, my friend. So thank you, Alexander. I will not throw it away. I appreciate it, my friend. I know you love Rose Tico. Oh, man. Not Ryan Johnson says, good morning. It's always a better Sunday when I get to hear your live stream. Thank you. Dan says, I'm not sure if YouTube gives you a feature, and then if you lose a number of subscribers, they take it away. They will actually take, because here's the thing. This channel, the Rational Roundtable channel, was monetized in the past, but then I kind of let the channel go dormant, and they took it away. And let's see. Dan says, man, I hate it when the chat starts going crazy. Someone said it was God's given right. What does that exactly mean? It means that it is an inalienable right. If it's God's, for example, it's God's given right that you have your own opinion on things. The idea is that if you look at the way that the Constitution is written or the Declaration of Independence, that people have certain rights that are not in the purview of man to take away. And chiefly among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That man does not have the right to deprive those things from his fellow man. And so a God-given right simply means that God put you on this planet, gave you the right to do this, and no man has the right to take that away, even though sometimes they do. And let's see. What really baffles me is how people operate to take my money, tinker with my car at the shop, use a calculator to check cashiers, mystery bill charges, pay cash so he won't get double debit charges. Exhausting. Yeah. And Mr. Miles is here, says, I never snored or had trouble breathing in my sleep, but I talk a lot in my sleep when I have trouble sleeping. That's interesting. Some people do, some people don't. I don't really talk in my sleep, but Mrs. Anti-Trigger does sometimes. God is Trinity, and creation is Trinity in nature, land, sea, air, liquid, solid, gas, proton, neutron, electron. That's just a tiny slice of the big picture. That's I never really thought about it that way. That's interesting. Alexander says, it's important for you for your collection. Glad you like it. So I go to my meeting. Have a great day. Thank you, Alexander. I appreciate it, you nutcase. Aberjam says, I'm just glad that doll he sent you was clothed. Alexander has something of a reputation. Very true. That's why when if I get something from Alexander, I want to be careful when I'm opening it up. Jeff says to Abraham Bot, wait, what are these 6 quarks? Up, down, pop, top, bottom, charm, and strange. Although one could argue that up and down are one type, top and bottom are one type, charm and strange are one type. So I don't know. I don't know how he's going to respond to that one. And I'm not an expert on the quarks, so other than the one on Deep Space Nine. Why do you have a coffee cup using Maxwell colors? It appears to be Maxwell color. It's not. It's just plaid. It's not. This has nothing to do with Maxwell. This is just a plaid, a nice large plaid coffee cup. So the colors are not specific to anything. By the way, remind me if Darren Wagner happens to show up. I got a package from him too, but I don't want to open it until he's here. So I'm hoping that he makes it. They've gone to plaid, yes. Or no, or as Bird of Prey would say, played. What is played? Oh, Bird, you nuthead. I loved listening to Bird's Empire Strikes Back stream yesterday. Bespin? Why are they going to Bespin? Wait, what happened to the hyperdrive? Man, it was great. It was classic. Bespin. You guys. And as you can see, Auntie is up here snoozing away. I gotta say, Auntie is not doing too well, honestly, and that's, I'm worried about her. You guys know, oh, there's Darren. I love Auntie. She's a sweet dog, but we also didn't know how old she was when we got her, but she's slowing down a little bit. She's showing signs that she may actually have something in common with me is that she might be having some arthritis. So I actually turn up the heat in here a bit more than I usually do to help keep her comfortable. That's why there's a blanket right here for her to snuggle up with. So and she's just slowing down kind of dramatically over the last few weeks. And so I'm worried about her, but if it's her time, it's her time. There you go. She's like, what are you doing, you idiot? All right, so let's take a look at what Darren sent. So hopefully this better not be a Rose Tico comic book, because if it is, I'm officially quitting this channel forever. Well, an anti-tricker too, because I can only handle so much Rose Tico in one day. And so I am assuming it's a comic book because this is how you ship comic books. And let's see. Oh, very cool, my friend. This is awesome. I will proudly add this to my collection. This is Hyperactives #1. And I know a lot of you are like, Hyperactives #1, never heard of it. Well, you can see it's a small publishing house, Alias Comics. But this is the important thing about this, and I've been wanting to get this for a while because Wagner, as in Darren Wagner, wrote this book. So I am very, very excited. I can't wait to read it, my friend. What is Mr. Miles sending me now? Oh, I see. So you're saying, yeah, those are similar. He sent me a picture of the Maxwell family colors, but yeah, this is not the same. Like a family plaid. Like I actually have a couple of kilts in the Crawford and Lindsay patterns because that's what I can wear. The white pinstriping, obviously not in the Maxwell colors, and that is important. Every single line in a plaid that is a family tartan is meaningful. So yeah. Anyway, back to the chat we go. Dan says, are there any religious opinions on rainbows? Some religious people don't like rainbows because they're used in gay culture. Well, I like rainbows. And as far as, we know that the rainbow, it's kind of funny because the rainbow originally was a symbol that God put out to say that he would not flood the earth again. And fine. And that's it's a cute little part of the Noah story. Some people take it as absolute literal fact. Some people take it as a parable. It doesn't really matter. But the fact that gay culture appropriated the rainbow, and it's funny because it didn't even start there, because really it started with the Reverend man, now I'm forgetting his name. The idiot ran for president 8 million times. Jesse Jackson. Jesse Jackson? I think that, yeah, Jesse Jackson. The Reverend Jesse Jackson created what he called the Rainbow Coalition back in the 80s. And the Rainbow Coalition was the idea that people of all different backgrounds, right? Black, white, brown, yellow, etc., right? All the colors of people, even though really everybody's the same color, just different shades of the same color. That this Rainbow Coalition would rise up and elect him president, that people from every background would support him. And of course, that went nowhere. But then the gay culture basically took the Rainbow Coalition and turned it into a symbol for them. And I find it kind of funny because you know how people like to talk about how, well, Christmas is really just pagan and you're celebrating pagan traditions. Well, then the gays are celebrating Christian traditions, so good for them. Let's see. I have a packet of Walker's shortbread and kind of looks like that. Yeah, it kind of does. But it's just, as people think, it's a red and green plaid, so people, but there's a lot of, tartan patterns are not just about the colors, they're also about the pattern of those colors, and that it's not the same thing. I see the Bible changes throughout the ages with society. with society. However, most churches seem to have just stayed with the tradition and not changed with society, or at least here. Well, the Bible hasn't changed at all. I'm not sure what you mean there, Carl. I mean, here's the thing. Different interpretation of the Bible can change, but that interpretation should not change to reflect society. It should change to reflect a more accurate translation. We should always be trying to get more accurate translations of the Bible, not simply change to reflect our culture. Cultural Christianity is an extremely dangerous thing. We don't want that. But as far as the Bible doesn't change. What changes is people's attitudes about it, or sometimes the actual translation can change if we get more information or better information on what certain things here. And the interesting thing is there are, in fact, political aspects to some of the interpretations as well. So, for example, the King James, the reason we have the word baptize in our modern vernacular is because they refuse to translate that term in the King James Bible, because baptize means to immerse, and they didn't want to have to immerse people to baptize them. I'm going down the street to grab coffee. Be right back. All right, my friend. And of course, Bird of Prey is saying free. Auntie is perfectly free. Just because she's got a blanket on doesn't mean she couldn't get out. Free Aberjam, absolutely. We need a free Aberjam. And then free Turtistan. Turtistan is in fact free. Reading Rainbow, says Mr. Miles. Why not? Darren says, before I go, I do believe the gay rainbow is 6 stripes, where the real rainbow has 7. I actually never really noticed, so I have no idea. Because I don't care about the gay rainbow. I really don't. Although kind of whenever Skittle says taste the rainbow, no thank you. Schrober says, Aberjam UK, hail Karoga. The Re-Education Center will correct your erroneous belief that Turkestan is a good nation. You will be asking for Karogan protection against the Rational Roundtable invasion. Hang in there, my friend. Hang in there. From the beginning to the end of the Bible, Jews to Christians, from the beginning to the end of the Bible, Jews to Christians, how to live. Is that a statement or a question? I'm not sure exactly what you mean there, Carlo. Wesley says too early. Sorry, my friend. And Dan puts up a rainbow of thumbs up. Thank you. Trustin says, do you believe that there will be that we will have a future out in the solar system? When you look at the Bible, there's no mention of man living off-world. I always wonder about this. There's also no mention of the internet, cars, airplanes, and a lot of other stuff. So, will man venture out into space? Depends on how much time we've got. Honestly, that's all it is. Will we? Possibly, if we have several centuries more. But will we? But the problem is, and this is, and the funny thing is, you're going to hear something that you don't hear often from the conservative Christian type people. Part of it depends on the race of, will mankind get off the planet before global warming renders the planet uninhabitable, right? Which comes first? That may be a factor, but the as far as the Bible doesn't address it directly. Doesn't really matter. All we know is that the time of man will end. We don't know when. And by the way, 80 scientists would agree with that. The time of man will end, because eventually man will go extinct, or the universe will come to an end. So, clean my Keurig last night. Coffee tastes so much better after cleaning the Keurig. Just make sure to run plenty of water through it after cleaning it. Absolutely. Actually, mine is due for a cleaning. I'm going to take it downstairs in the next day or two to clean it out real good. Mr. Miles says, get woke. No, thank you. Aberjam says, Jeff Franklin and Rational Roundtable. So, on a brief reading, it seems as though that there are 6 quarks. They always come in 3, so every nucleus is a trinity of trinities. Interesting. If your like button is gray, choke it till it turns blue. Wow, didn't know that. Yeah, that works. I have to say, I'm a bit surprised to find you believe in climate change or global warming as a thing. Agree to Christians I've come across don't. Well, here's the thing. First of all, we could debate as to the extent of man's impact on climate change. I think there's a debate to be had there. I'm not taking sides on it because I am not a climatologist. I'm not an expert on this, all right? But I do believe that there's a debate as far as how much man's carbon emissions and stuff contribute to global warming. However, if you want to argue about the existence of global warming, then quite frankly, you are an ignoramus. However you say it. Because the thing is that I understand, all you got to do is understand some of the basic science to know that global warming is inevitable, right? We are currently in an ice age. We're in the tail end of an ice age, but we are in one. Now, if you look at, people are saying, what are you talking about? People don't understand what an ice age even means. The scientific definition of an ice age means that there's radical differences in temperature between the poles and the equator, and it's characterized by ice sheets on the poles. Guess what? That's now. And there have been periods of time on this planet where there was no ice, periods of times where there was massive amounts of ice that went all the way down into the, like Mason-Dixon line just about. And so it fluctuates as far as how much ice there is, but eventually if you come out of an ice age, then there will be no polar ice caps. All the people, it's kind of funny because this is the flip side of the deniers on the conservative side are the liberals that think that there would always be ice caps if we just stopped driving around in SUVs. Because guess what? The ice caps are going away, baby. No matter what happens, the ice caps are going away. It's just a matter, will it happen in 100 years, 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years? Well, that we can argue about. But they're going away. The ice cap, there have been long stretches of time where there were no ice caps. So, that's just a fact. Now, all that being said, this, we cannot, so that will happen, right? And depending on the ecosystem involved, how fragile it is, it could be devastating to life on this planet. It could render this planet uninhabitable for humans, right? So when that happens, guess what? We're out. And so if we're not in space by then, we're screwed. So there we go. The author says in the voice of Palpy, well, since Christianities are using pagan beliefs, then Christians are pagan, so give in to the pagan side. Yeah, some people do believe that, and, I'm sorry, celebrating Christmas doesn't make you a pagan any more than showing up for church on Easter makes you a Christian. We are coming out of an ice age, but we are making a small impact on the climate, but we have no control to stop it. I agree. However, I'm not an expert, so I would not enter into a debate about it. I agree with what you just said, but that's just my personal opinion as a lay person, and I totally take the mantle of a lay person when it comes to that. But we don't have control to stop it. That's giving up before you even try. Well, no, you know what? I do. But here's the thing, and this is where I think some of the environmentalists make the wrong choices here, Mr. Miles. You know what? We should be driving electric cars. We should be using clean air. You know why? Who wants smog? Nobody wants smog. So how about we push the environmentalists just for personal comfort? I love you and most of you guys weren't around in the 60s and 70s when smog was worse than it is now. You don't understand how the improvements we've made. Bird of Prey says, it's not 1,000,000 years, because Bird, of course, is a climatologist. You didn't know that, did you? I saw a maid milk a bull. What a silly maid. I saw a maid milk a bull. A bull, and every tug a bucket full. Oh, jeez. Going to space, going to the bottom of the ocean, do you think you're supposed to go there because our bodies are not designed to cope with those environments? Well, here's the thing, Dan. Our body can't cope with most environments on this planet. The only environment that humans are really designed for is Africa. Because anywhere else you have to have clothes, shelter, stuff like that in order to survive. You would not survive a winter in Wisconsin without clothes and shelter. All right, so let's see. Carlos says, the main question is, can humans adapt or evolve to live in the next age of this planet, another Jurassic age? That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that, because here's the thing. humans are not evolving per se. We're not adapting to our, and here's the thing. I know people think evolving means like moving to a better form. No, evolving is basically a process of adaptation, right? Because anything that helps a species survive, as far as a mutation, would tend to propagate throughout the species, because those that have that mutation are more likely to survive than those that don't. So that's how evolution works. The problem is humans are doing the opposite. All right. We are evolving our environment to take care of us. We are not evolving us to adapt to our environment. And in fact, certain traits that could be seen as beneficial for survival are no longer attractive to people. And so, like, for example, being a powerful, strong male, right? That is something that is a benefit to survival in the wild. However, in the modern politically correct climate, that's all bad. That's toxic masculinity. And so we want to get that out of the human genome, right? So we're actually devolving. We're becoming more dependent on our technology in order to survive. And the more dependent we are on our technology, the less able we are to survive in our natural environment, and eventually that will spell the end of mankind. Unless we manage to continue to advance our technology. You're correct about being an ice age. We're fluctuating warm to cold in the next few million years. We're due for cooling in about 30,000 years, but it's a warming cycle for now. Yes. If we destroy the world with global warming and escape to space, do you think the ships will damage space? No. Because space is devoid of almost everything. You cannot destroy nothing. Bird of Prey isn't a climate expert. He's a Bond villain. That is very true. He actually has a weather machine. Do not forget that Bird of Prey 5 has a weather machine. And, I am out there in the jungles of Kurogan outposts trying to destroy said weather machine. We have the technology to clean the air and the water and the land, but no one is willing to invest in it. Well, here's the problem. It sounds really easy like that, but it's not that simple. All right. If you really wanted to invest in it, then how about 100% income tax for everybody? Because that wouldn't be enough, by the way. And even the funny thing is that some of the stuff that we argue is good for the environment is bad for the environment, because sometimes the manufacture of these clean products produces toxic waste. So we got to be careful about what we're saying there. There's definitely, I think there's room for reducing pollution. I think that's a good thing. But let's not pretend that we have the we'll just build solar cells. Do you have any idea how toxic building solar cells is? Look it up. Humans are not supposed to walk up straight properly, yet, which is so many people have lower back problems. Would be fine in Mars gravity. Too bad it's lost its atmosphere. I'd move to Mars. Believe me, I would move to Mars. Joseph says, exactly, we're not evolving. I am not built to survive neither heat nor cold. I need floor heating during winters and AC in the summer. Exactly. Me too. And so that we are definitely becoming more dependent on our technology. So if we ever reach a point where our technology fails us, we are all dead, except for maybe some people in South America and Africa. Seriously, everybody else is dead. Our technology will eventually allow us to directly control our evolution, inserting genes from other animals, turning on or off dominant genes, so on. It'll be interesting to see. Actually, I dread that day. And that will literally be man playing God at that point. Hopefully Khan won't be the result. I actually think that maybe not Khan, but something like that would be the result. Because I think it's true what Spock said. Superior ability breeds superior ambition. If you actually were able to, let's say that you could insert animal traits into a person, anything you wanted, right? So, and you could do it to yourself even. So like, hey, first of all, let's cure my arthritis. That's good. All right. So now I'm going to give myself the, I'm going to give myself the eyes of an eagle, right? And the ears of a hound, so I can hear things for miles away, right? So I'm going to have super senses, basically. I'm going to have the nose of a hound as well. And so I'm just going to, I'm going to have super senses, number one. Okay, good. So we're good there. Now, let's give myself a tough leather hide, like a rhinoceros or something, so that, hey, practically bulletproof. This is going to be awesome, right? All right, so then what's next? Well, I'm going to beef up the muscles a bit. You're basically turning yourself into superheroes, right? So you do this, and what happens? Well, you're going to want to test your abilities. Superior ability breeds superior ambition. Devolving started to sound like to me, yes, devolving is actually a good, because if evolving is adapting to your environment, devolving is adapting your environment to you. That's what and basically you become less resilient. Do you like the theory that there could be cold fusion, cold stars like the sun, which is blue and temperatures are cold and not hot? That makes zero sense to me, because cold fusion does not mean cold fusion. That's a misnomer. Cold fusion simply means that you can achieve fusion in a relatively cool environment. You don't have to superheat the elements to achieve fusion. But fusion itself releases a huge amount of energy, which includes heat. And so there's no such thing as cold fusion literally being cold. Cold fusion just means you can start the fusion process without superheating it. With genetic engineering, we can at least eliminate the Kurogen gene. That's true. That would be good for all of humanity. I agree. An electric car isn't better because of the battery lifespan and disposal and how it gets the energy from a power plant. But if industrial cleaning was done, electric cars would work. Well, and that's the thing. So I don't know what Tesla's practices are at their plants as far as their manufacturing process. But even if Tesla is 100% green and every little bit of toxic byproducts of their batteries and stuff is stored on Tesla facilities until they can get together with Elon Musk and shoot him into the sun, right? Even if it's 100% clean. What about where you're getting your electricity from? Because guess what? That electricity, chances are, is coming from coal, burning coal. That ain't good for the environment. So, it's not a gas burner. You're right, it's a coal burner. Superior ability doesn't have to breed superior ambition. Look at examples in comic books. It can happen, but it doesn't have to. I think that in people, look at people that have a superior intellect don't sit around and work at McDonald's, right? People that have superior physical abilities don't sit around and at a desk, right? People who have superior abilities already use them. So why would that change just because the abilities became more dramatic? And that you could pick and choose your abilities. If you could pick and choose your abilities, holy crap! Make it so that my eyes are sharper. Make it so that I'm quicker to think about stuff, so that I can get things done. But yeah, you're going to design yourself to be able to do whatever you want, and you'll just continue to have more ambition. And Superman and Supergirl are unrealistic caricatures. That's the idea. Superman was originally created as a Jewish example of what the Messiah should be, right? That's literally what he was supposed to be. He was supposed to be the savior of humanity, like what Christians view Jesus was supposed. Superman was designed by a couple of Jews as an example of this is what the savior is supposed to be. Well, yeah, if you are a perfect human being, then you have and you're completely selfless, then yeah, Superman is great. But guess what? You give Superman's abilities to anybody else, and you have a tyrant. Bird of Prey is weather machine. Parts of the East Coast of Canada have just had a winter storm with winds up to 140 miles an hour, 70 centimeters of snow. Come on, Bird of Prey, not cool. Yeah, he's testing his weather machine. Evolution actually is de-evolution. It is the removal of genes by natural selection. The superior genes will eventually become defective and also be removed. Well, I'm not going to argue about all that because I'm not a geneticist, okay? So talk to Richard Dawkins about that. Superior ability can lead to, with great power comes great responsibility. Yes, I believe in human nature. I think that people are naturally narcissistic and selfish. I don't think that people are naturally going to say, I have superior ability, so I'm going to go feed the poor. No. Darren says, back. Speaking of cold fusion, unlike sunlight, which is warm, moonlight is cold. Things in moonshade are warmer than in moonlight. Observable, testable, repeatable. I don't know if that's true or not, Darren. I've never heard that before in my life. Supergirl's realistic because she's a millennial, says Bird. Yeah, there's proof that Bird is a supervillain right there. Investing in vast numbers of fast-growing trees to clean the air. There are also fake trees that are able to clean the air much faster. It comes down coast to coast. Actually, but here's the problem, Valor, and I, people have tried to, improve upon nature by doing things like that. Investing in vast numbers of fast-growing trees to clean the air. Do you have any idea how many trees you would have to plant to actually make a difference? Millions. Hundreds of millions. And do you know how, those trees don't just grow on magic, right? That they actually leach nutrients from the soil, like any living thing, they have to consume in order to grow. They don't just grow on sunlight. Sunlight helps them, but that's not it, right? So yes, they would clean the air and they would leach the soil. I think people are naturally good, and the world beats it out of them. You and I are opposites on that. I think that people are naturally narcissistic. I won't say evil, but narcissistic. That's our sinful nature, as we would say in Christian circles. But as far as I believe that people are not just naturally altruistic, I think they are naturally narcissistic. Superman represents what many philosophies believe one should be when they possess any degree of power, either physical or authoritarian. That's true, but that's also, Darren, it's a pipe dream. People don't act like that when they have power. Look at freaking, the old saying, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, is true. All right? Look at our political system. Our political system was founded on the idea of freedom of tyranny, and our political system has become tyrannical. Consider that. And so, let's see. What about the idea of genetic manipulation to remove mental disability? Would that be a bad thing? Well, it depends. So if you, for example, if you have someone who is severely mentally retarded, right? And you say, well, we can fix that. And so that sounds like, oh yeah, that's nice. Is that still the same person after you do that? Is that person meant to live a life with a mental disability? It seems cruel. I don't know. I don't like the idea of playing God. And then I look at certain things that we consider disabilities. Are they really disabilities at all? Like, I know, and don't get me wrong, I think that the whole thing that autism is the next step in human evolution is stupid. But people who are autistic also tend to be very intelligent. And, there are people speculate that people like Einstein was in fact autistic. So why is removing autism necessarily a good thing? Yes, it can be difficult to overcome, but there are a million things that are difficult to overcome. Everybody has things that are difficult to overcome. So yeah. Genetically enhanced human race would be useful to free Abraham. Well, we don't use mutants. That's Bird of Prey does experiment on humans though, so there is that. Let's see. Carlo says plants give out CO2 at night when they eat food they make in the daylight. Okay. If we're naturally good, then we wouldn't have the need for a God. You are right. And that's the thing. Yeah, I think that there's truth in that. But I know that, people that don't believe in God want to believe, and I understand this is actually an interesting dichotomy here. It's true that most people that believe in God believe humans are evil, and most people that do not believe in God believe humans are good. And that's actually an interesting dichotomy. But the thing is that I think that the objective evidence shows that humans are evil. My earlier question was asking if you believe that there may be some types of stars that are not giant balls of heat and some could be blue and cold. No, because a star is a giant fusion reactor. So there's no such thing. I mean, if you were to set foot on the coldest star, then you would burst into flames, assuming there was oxygen there. But you know what I mean. You would be evaporated from the heat. I don't believe power corrupts. I believe it merely attracts those that are corruptible. Well, okay. I never read Superman comics and get accurate interpretation of. I never read Superman comics to get an accurate interpretation of someone's powers. I read them because they're fun. Yeah, that's true too. And Mr. Miles, here's the thing. I don't think that, for example, I believe Barack Obama when he says that he wanted to make a difference and help people when he got into politics. I believe that most people who get into politics do so with a similar attitude. And I believe that those people are corrupt because they're corrupted by having power. Once you start giving people everything, once why do you think corruption is so rampant in Hollywood? Those people have power. You know, if you're given everything, you're constantly told you're a genius your whole life, and everybody looks up to you, you start looking down upon them. Do you think anything like the eugenics wars from Star Trek will happen in the future? Oh, I hope not. And honestly, probably not. I don't think man will last that long. Had man replaced the trees they had killed by logging, we would have slowed down the damage to the planet. Well, you know, and that's a kind of ironic thing, too. It's like, because being a person from Oregon, I will tell you, you know, everybody in the 90s was all upset about clear cutting. Loggers are going in clear cutting these swaths of trees, right? And guess what? It was, first of all, it was the logging companies that started planting more trees, not the government. And second of all, clear cutting was a government mandate that was put onto the logging companies back in like the 20s or 30s because they felt it would be healthier for the forests. So the government is coming down, and Bill Clinton pretty much destroyed the logging industry of Oregon, impoverished thousands of people because they were following a government mandate. Think about that. Ms. Miles says, to a degree, I would consider myself a humanist. I know you would. And you and I have a fundamental difference of opinion there. There's a Matt Smith episode of Doctor Who, Who's Amy's Choice, and it had to be a blue cold star. Yeah, but that's Doctor Who, and Doctor Who gives exactly 0 rips about scientific accuracy. Do you believe General Butt Naked of Liberia has truly become a Christian after claiming to have heard from Jesus himself? I hadn't heard about that. So I cannot believe or deny something I do not have knowledge of. Aberdam says, I believe Carlos is incorrect. Plants take nutrients from the soil, but they remove CO2 from the air and convert it to oxygen. That's why we need trees. Right. Well, I might have misunderstood what Carlos said, but yes, that's basically my understanding. Is that plants do take nutrients from the soil. That plants consume nutrients from the soil. They consume they convert sunlight into energy, and they also absorb water from the soil and from their direct surface. That's how they feed themselves. Now, their respiration is interesting because it's almost the opposite of ours. They're like CO2 scrubbers, which is awesome for creating this balance. The problem is that if you plant 8 bazillion trees, you have perfectly clean air and your soil is dead. Let's see. Jupiter, if it had more mass, would have been another star. That's probably true, but I think Jupiter is not pure hydrogen also. People who seek power will have it usually, and those who seek it are the corruptible ones. And why do people seek power? That becomes an interesting question. Karoga has set hundreds of scientists to land on the sun. That's true. Darren says, people forget that wood is a natural resource. It would be like saying corn farmer couldn't harvest his crop because people like the way the field looks. That's very true. Science is so complicated that when it's on a planetary scale and larger, it boggles the mind how it could possibly work naturally. And all we can go off is our own personal observations. That's Well, the problem is that it's impossible to understand every scientific field in its entirety, right? That's just not possible. One human brain can't do that. But we can understand bits and pieces of it, of how it works. We can understand the high level view of it, right? So we might understand the basics of how a climate works. But people think, oh, well, trees give off oxygen and absorb CO2, so just plant a bunch of trees and you got that taken care of. Here's the problem. What happens if the atmosphere gets too much oxygen in it? We've seen that on Futurama. Guess what? Fires go up. You increase the oxygen count too much, and you end up burning the planet. It's actually, fact. In Star Wars Rebels, they encountered a cis droid commander, and he explained that they were fighting for tyranny. That's hilarious. Hundreds of Turtistani scientists. So Bird of Prey is acknowledging that they've killed hundreds of Turtistani scientists by having them land on the sun. In the day, plants take nutrients from the soil and CO2 from the air to produce glucagon. And in the night, it takes O2 back down to the it takes in O2 to back down the glucose and gives out CO2, and that's why most animals sleep at night, lower O2 levels. I've never heard that before, Carlo, but I am not a arborist, so I don't know jack about trees other than that I like sitting in the shade more than in the sun. Jupiter would have to be about 80 times bigger to be a small red dwarf star. That's a big difference in size. Yeah, well, Jupiter is a burp in the universe, nothing more. Half the planet breathes in what the other half planet breathes out, and vice versa. Incredibly convenient. Good job at random chaos and so thoughtful. Alexa, play Wake Up Alarm for Joe. Metallica 1, full volume. That'd be hilarious if that actually worked. No, I think that, but the thing about climate is that I do believe that the climate will eventually be the end of us. Yeah. Dan says we both have dyslexia. Well, just remember, dyslexics of the world, untie! We were driving down the street. There was a bumper sticker that said that. And Mrs. Antitracker laughed at the bumper sticker. I said, what? She said, that bumper sticker. And I said, what? It says dyslexics of the world, unite. And then she said, oh, yeah. Yeah, that's not what it says. So, yeah, I understand. How are you doing, Auntie? Auntie is just sleeping all the time. Yeah, you're just a lazy dog, aren't you? You're getting old. And let's see. Some people from countries like Africa can run quicker. That's kind of an ignorant statement, Dan. You do realize Africa is not a country. And there are fast runners from multiple parts of the world. I think that playing the eugenics card there is you get into some dangerous territory, my friend. I would stop you right there because trust me, you don't want to go down that road. And by the way, if you come from an area that's completely impoverished and the only way that you can do anything significant is by running and running and running, you're going to run faster. Why? You know what? Kids from the ghetto don't dominate the NBA because they're black. Okay? They dominate the NBA because they're from the ghetto, because they were shown that the only way that they could be a success was to be an athlete. That they couldn't be, society was so against them that they couldn't get a real job. They couldn't get even a shot at getting a real job. They couldn't get a decent education because guess what? We crap all over the schools in the inner cities. And so what could they do? They could play some b-ball. And so, and that's why a lot of kids in the inner cities play basketball more than they're at school. And so why should you be shocked that the NBA is dominated from people from the inner cities when the fact is that that's all they have? And, there's not, it's not just, oh, well, they're genetically more attuned to it. No, the society has forced them into that position. So I think that you want to be careful about the whole race realism stuff because it's based on bad science. Let's see. Zach says, I see a lot of people driving electric SUVs, and now such days, I think electric is better way to go. Well, here's the thing. I will tell you that, and this is the honest truth. Personally, I like driving trucks, not because I like hauling things around in a pickup truck, but because I'm a tall guy and the arthritis is getting worse. It's hard. It's actually incredibly painful and difficult for me to get in and out of a compact car. I can't do it. I'll be honest with you. You guys know my sister-in-law died. My wife is going to get her car. Right, we got to figure out a way to get to Portland to drive the car back to Tennessee. But she gets her car. Well, her car is a Mini Cooper. So guess what? Once the car is here, I will never get in that car again. If the wife needs to run an errand, she can do it in her little Mini Cooper. But yeah, that Chevy Equinox I have, that's as small a car as I can handle. So if I like SUVs and pickup trucks because they're a good height and size for someone like me, because I'm pushing 6'2", I'm kind of fat, and I am also very arthritic, and so I'm in a lot of pain all the time. So, that being said, when Tesla showed off the Cybertruck, I'm like, yes, I want me one of those, right? So if I had the money to buy a new truck, that is what I would get. If you haven't seen it, check out the Tesla Cybertruck. It's weird looking, but it looks like a truck version of a DeLorean. And so I would buy that truck in a heartbeat. Now, would I buy it because it's electric? I actually do like the idea of running off electricity. And so that's a good thing because I do care about the environment and stuff like that. However, do I think we should mandate electric vehicles? No, because I also know that it would be impractical if I was trying to haul stuff around. An electric vehicle would drain way too fast if I had a full payload in a truck like that. It wouldn't be a good truck for driving cross country. You need a gas burner to get across the country because guess what? That truck only has a range of like 500 miles. And then you got to recharge the thing. Guess what? There's not recharging stations everywhere. So yeah. Anyway, let's see. I believe that any noticeable change in CO2 levels between night and day. Animals that sleep at night have eyes that don't work well in the dark. Other animals that are active at night see better in the dark. See, that's kind of what I tend to think, but, hey, I don't know, if there's any truth to what Carla was saying. I'm not an arborist. So, a woman touched Jesus' robe and sapped some of his power. What's up with that? Well, you read it. A lot of what Jesus says is that people's faith is what heals them, right? Now, yes, it's Jesus's godly ability that does it, but you also have to believe in him. And so she was so convinced that he could heal her that she knew that if she just touched his robe, she would be healed. And she touched his robe and she was healed. And the idea is talking about the benefit of faith, the benefit that the trust in God. And she had it in spades, where most of us do not. See, one of the things I've gotten out of my Christian walk is that the Earth's fate is determined. Therefore, I don't worry about climate change wiping out humanity. Well, here's the thing. I agree that Earth's fate is determined, but at the same time, I don't think that it is appropriate for us to just crap on the planet. See what I'm saying? And in fact, Abraham nails it right there, but we should still be good stewards of creation. Yes, we were given dominion over the planet. Guess what? That means that it's our fault. If humanity could set aside its hate and bigotry, we could then turn our attention to space technology, medical technology. Think we'll ever reach that goal? No, I do not. Sorry to be pessimistic about that, but from what I've seen of human nature, no. We're never going to become so altruistic, however the hell you say it, you know what I'm trying to say, so nice, so non-selfish that we would actually care more about helping others than helping ourselves. That's never going to happen. And even the nicest, kindest of us, we don't do that, right? I know some people say, well, I'm a good person. I give to Red Cross. I donate blood every week, and I give 10% of my income to the church, and I help out and I volunteer at a soup kitchen and all this stuff, right? And that's all fine and dandy. But guess what? If you're truly altruistic, what are you doing living in anything other than squalor? Because you should be living in the bare minimum survival type level so that you can give 80% of your income away. Or, you should be in Africa digging wells right now, right? If we really, really were so selfless as people think that they are, we would not be living the lifestyle we are living right now. And every single one of us is proof of that, because guess what? Internet is not a requirement of life. And yet we all have it one way or another, whether it's on our phone or on our computers. Now, some people will use justifications on it. Well, I need internet because I make money on a YouTube channel and I couldn't make my YouTube channel money. And if I didn't make my YouTube channel money, I couldn't donate to the church, right? Okay, so find your income another way, right? And that's an indictment on me, so, but, I could also say, well, but my regular job also requires that I have internet. Well, maybe you should work somewhere else. So there's, we make excuses and justifications for our luxuries. Our electric vehicles in my area are nuclear powered because the Genoa nuclear power plant is where that electricity came from. Okay. Bird of Prey 5, more awake at nighttime because of ancient humans, so select few would stay up at night to keep an eye out for danger whilst the tribe sleep and evolve through our DNA to now. I think that's, honestly, Carlo, no, I'm not an expert, but that is not evolution, and that's not how it works, because you don't develop a trait to stay up at night because you were put on guard duty. That's a learned behavior, not a genetic trait. Someone said that God provides food in nature, but they're not deadly mushrooms but they're not deadly mushrooms and stuff out there. God does provide food in nature. Don't eat the deadly mushrooms. That's not food. Tom says, Tesla truck looks worse than crap. I disagree. I like it. And I know some people think it's ugly. Some people think it's the ugliest thing ever. Some people think it's cool. I'm on the cool side. I think it's cool. But actually, I wanted a Tesla Roadster when they first came out. I thought the idea was cool. But I could never, they're way too low to the ground. Even the Tesla sedan, as cool as it is, too low to the ground for me. I struggle to get in and out of my freaking Equinox, and that's not that, and that's, an average size SUV. So something like the Tesla truck would be better. Is something like God's testing us all the time? Is everything like God's testing us all the time, or does he test us sometimes? Depends on the individual. We have a lot of short people in Wisconsin. I'm 5'8". This land was settled by Germans, Norwegians, British, and evidently hobbits. Yes, well, remember, I'm supposed to be a hobbit, even though I'm 6'2". And so, whatever. I have heard that it takes more energy to make a wind turbine than it creates during its lifespan. If so, it seems clean energy is not as easy as people think. I don't know about to make a wind turbine as far as it taking more energy, but it does take a lot of energy to make one of those things. Wesley says, I'm 6'3", kind of fat, and I fit in a small car. Yes, and you know what? I also said I am arthritic. That is the killer. Yes, if I was just pushing 6'2", kind of fat, and other than that, perfectly healthy. I've had small cars in my life, right? My first car was a Ford Pinto. Yes, a Ford Pinto, all right? I used to have a Honda Prelude for my car. I had a Ford Escort for my car. And we had a Ford Fiesta, right? So small cars, yeah, sure. But guess what? Once you get to it, like right now, to get out of the chair I'm sitting in right now is an extremely painful operation for me. All right, so getting up, in fact, you've seen, I'm sure, at Costco, if you've ever been to Costco or something like that, you've seen those chairs that actually lift up, the chairs that actually lift up so that you don't have to actually lean forward and push out of a chair. It actually lifts you out of the chair. I could really use one of those. All right, because getting out of a chair is difficult, and it's the arthritis that's just that's getting worse and worse and worse. It doesn't help that I also have a bad back, but the arthritis is what's really the core problem at this point. Nothing I can do about it. It's just something I have to live with. But getting a small car, could I survive it? Possibly, but getting in and out, like right now, the wife would have to help me get in and out of the car every single time. Mr. Miles says, so Jesus is like a vampire. You have to invite him in first? In a sense, yes. AKA Anti-Checker, if God knows the future, does that mean everything is fated? No, it just means God knows already what choices you will have made. Because here's the thing, if God is outside of what we call time, right, which most people would agree that God is outside of space-time as a whole. So past, present, future, all the same thing to God. And so from his perspective, he hasn't necessarily, unless he needs to, he hasn't necessarily changed your free will. He hasn't made you make a choice. He just knows what choice you're going to make. And so you are still responsible for your actions. God may know what those actions are going to be, but you're ultimately responsible for them. God didn't, and this is where predestination gets a little confusing, where people misunderstand it. They think that God writes out in advance what you are to do, that every choice that you make was actually decided by God. If that were the case, and I've made this argument with people that are into the predestination, the idea that there's no free will. If that's true, if there's no free will, if God has made every choice for you in advance, then you are not responsible for anything you do. It's a pure deterministic universe, which is also, I would believe in determinism if I was still an atheist. I did believe in determinism when I was an atheist. But everything that you do is simply a result of God's choice, and therefore not your fault, and therefore, who the heck is God condemning people for doing what God told them to do, right? That doesn't make any freaking sense. However, if God just happens to know what choices you're going to make and doesn't intervene because free will is important to him, that's different. I understand the faith aspect, but the account suggests that one can draw Jesus' power without his permission. Well, I think that here's the thing. It's not a matter of permission. And that's actually where I think people get confused on that. You don't need God's permission. You need to be aligned with God. That's where she was in line with Christ, and that's why she was able to draw his power, so to speak. People think that, okay, Lord, please give me a Maserati. I really want a Maserati. Will you just make one materialize in my garage? That is not in alignment with God, right? That's just me being selfish, right? And so, but if I say, God, if it is in your will, please make sure that, that please help me to take care of my family, then he may move things around to help that. Notice there's always the qualifier, if it is your will. We should always, always, always in our prayer life be saying, if it is your will, if it is your will. Your will be done, not mine. But that's not what most of us think. Now, for her, she believed that it was God's will for her to not be suffering with this issue of blood, I think it says in the Bible. And she was right. She was in line with God, and when she touched God, she was healed. And honestly, that's where, many of us have hopes and dreams and ambitions that are perfectly in line with God, but we refuse to reach out and touch God. Just because I believe the Earth's fate is determined doesn't mean I'm for dirty water, dirty air, etc. I shouldn't have to point that out. Well, I'm not saying you are, Darren, but my point is when you say, well, I don't worry about it because the Earth's fate is determined, that sounds like I don't care, right? And so that's the point that I and others are making. We are called to be good stewards. And so being a good steward doesn't mean, it's all doomed anyway, Why give this world $250 billion per year so they can have perfect schools, social programs where our inner city youth have to survive in designated third world poverty zones? Good question. Because people are corrupt. There's a religious group that believe life is like a musical or play that God wrote and we live it out, and that's why it's predetermined and he knows everything that's going to happen. Yes, I know. And those people are Batwoman crazy, in my humble opinion, right? I think the people that are biblical determinists, I think is the best way to describe that, where they believe in a biblical God, but they also believe that God has predestined and predetermined every action that every person will ever make. And it is like he wrote the screenplay and now we're just saying our lines. Why then, if that were God, God is evil. If that is God, God is evil. And I don't believe for a second that God is evil. Why? Because that means that God created people simply to be, he not only, created Hitler to do the horrible things he did, he wanted Hitler to do the horrible things that he did. And because if that's the kind of God, if he is the absolute writer of every line of dialogue on the earth, then every act of evil is of God. Mr. Miles likes the Tesla truck, as do I, my friend. So, hey, we actually agree on, what's that, the third thing ever? Darren says, well, I don't think the Tesla electric vehicles are quite there yet. They do look cool. At least Musk figured that out. I agree. Some people might seek power to control or feel safer, like they're feeling of control, like they're feeling, I assume you out of control, and then they would feel bad. Yes, but you see, that is in form of narcissism. You are not in control. And part of having a good, healthy, spiritual life is to understand it ain't about you. And so you're never going to be in control. And if you can't accept that, well, keep on trying to acquire your power so that you can be in control. You're not a hobbit, you're a shaved Wookiee. I'm definitely not a shaved Wookiee. Wait, where is Luke? Good question. I'm assuming he must be busy. I love Luke to death. He's a great guy, but I do not know his schedule, honestly. I don't know. I don't even know what he does for a living, but I know he's a great guy, and I love having him around. He's a great debater, too. As you guys know, in these streams, boy, does he rip me apart sometimes. Tressa says, we cannot prove the existence of God. There's a faith component to it. Do you think it's a valid point to say that there's circumstantial evidence that points to a creator? Yes, absolutely. I think the very nature of the universe points to a creator. Now, are you going to be able to say, and here's the problem, and this is where it always goes with these types of discussions, right? I start pointing out things like the Big Bang, the fact that time had a beginning, stuff like that, then all points to a creation event, a creation moment. And if there is a creation event, then something created, something caused the Big Bang to happen, something caused time to start, right? Something is a primal cause of everything, and that thing I posit is God, right? So then the opposite side of that argument is always, well, first of all, then where did God come from? That's argument number one. Another common argument is, well, that just points to a deistic entity. It doesn't even point to your God, and so that's where you start getting into these minutia arguments. And the simple fact is, you have to accept that if somebody, the only person that's ever going to convince someone that God exists is themselves. You are never going to convince someone that God exists. Now, I will always defend my position, but at the same time, I know full well that I can't force Luke to accept that God exists. I only have, but I can show him why I think God exists. Daryball says, aren't people in the military punished by Night Watch? Sounds like the hoopla about evolution is just proof your bloodline was always punished. Well, actually, some people, it depends. In the military, if you are a guard, like say you're in charge of security at some location, like military police commonly do security, might just be your shift, not necessarily punishment. You in a Pinto, why didn't you just buy a clown car? Hey, it was given to me. Aaron says, Wesley spent too much time trying to figure out whether or not he could. He never stopped to think of whether he should. Hashtag Jurassic cramped car. Yes. Wesley says, I'm sorry. Why? You're nothing to be sorry about, Wes. And let's see. Bird says, SpaceX rocket explosion test successful. Crew capsule test successful. Well, that's good. SpaceX is doing some great work. It'll be interesting to see if they, the problem is SpaceX just going to become a very expensive amusement park ride where people pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to take a quick trip to space? Or is SpaceX actually going to be humans moving into space? I hope for the latter, but I'm guessing it's the former. I think it was God having seen the DVD. The fact that you can watch your home movies doesn't mean your actions back then weren't a free choice. That's a good way to think of it. And in fact, think about it this way. You know exactly what Abraham Lincoln did, right? You may not know every detail, but you know generally what he did. That his failures as a youth. He eventually became president of the United States because of his hardline stance on certain issues, most notably slavery. There was a civil war, and he ended up being assassinated. Now, you knowing that doesn't change the fact that he made those free choices, right? So, God's knowledge of your actions doesn't change the fact that your actions are your actions. The batteries in electric cars take a lot of energy to produce and contain highly toxic and deadly acid and metals that are worse for the environment. That is true. If a family line had a trait of staying up to look for danger overnight over thousands of years, they say that bloodline would also get that trait eventually. I disagree with that. I think that that's not how evolution doesn't. You don't evolve to do things that you're forced to do, right? Here's the thing. Let's say you have a family that, for whatever reason, the Jones family, just call them the Night Watch family, because, a lot of times in the old days, your family name would come from what you did for a living. So you're part of the Night Watch family, and so your family is always doing guard duty. And there just happens to be a genetic trait that makes someone more likely to be nocturnal, right? That you're more of a night owl as opposed to a morning person. And someone marries into the Night Watch family that happens to have that gene, then that would be beneficial to the Night Watch family. But the odds of that happening are not increased just because they're the Night Watch family. So that gene, the odds of them getting that genetic mutation are no greater than the Day Watch family getting that same mutation. Let's see. Bird Prey says, but God was the director, producer, and the writer. No, God was, if anything, he was the producer. But we write our own lives. We make our own choices. People who left to make CIS and Star Wars believe that they were doing it to fight for freedom against the Republic's tyranny, but the audience knows they're doing it because of Sidious. The people, you're talking about the members of the Senate that sided with Sidious, that they were doing it to fight for freedom. I don't think that they were trying to fight for freedom when they got rid of freedom. Hey, how's your Rational Roundtable? I've just been watching a Falcon 9's self-destruction to test the spaceship's emergency escape. Oh, that's what Bird was talking about. He said that the test was successful. And so congratulations to the folks over at SpaceX. We can watch our home movies and know what's going to happen. Doesn't remove the free choice we had then. God's the same. He's just ahead of the game. I agree. The best car for you is a Peel P50. A Peel P50. I've never heard of that, and I'm half thinking that that's just a joke. But we'll see. I'm going to paste it into Google and see what comes up. Haha, very funny. Very, very funny. But at the same time, God does not reward selfishness. He won't reward that new car. Yes. Unless God wants you to do something, then he will override your free will, forcefully impregnate a woman, etc. Then free will is but an illusion. Yes, there are times that it's not that free will is an illusion. It's that free will can be overridden, right? So think about it this way. Think about the world as the most incredibly sophisticated game of The Sims, right? So we are created to, but we're autonomous. We make our own choices. Now, you need a sim to do a particular action. So you can, in fact, rewrite the code of that sim if you want to go through that level of trouble. You could rewrite the code for that sim to have a predisposition to do something, or you could temporarily take control of that sim. Right? And that's what you do in The Sims, right? You grab control of this sim so that you force this sim to do said action, and then you release the control and let them do their own thing again. That's kind of how God works. And if you look at at the Pharaoh of Egypt in Exodus, that's exactly what he did. Kronos says, anti-Trek rational roundtable. How be you this morning? I'm hanging in there, Kronos. Is 5'8" short? I don't believe so. I don't know what the average is these days, but let's see. What is... So let's see. The average height for men has been tracked over the years and been increasing. Average height for an adult male is 69.1 inches, or roughly 5'9" is your average male worldwide, it looks like. So there you go. So 5'8" isn't short, but it's just shy of average. What size is considered not sure and not over tall? Well, there you go. 5'9". If 5'9" is the average, then if you're less than, say, I would say, like, if you're less than 5'7", 5'6", you'd probably be considered short for a man. And if you're over 5'10", 5'11", you're tall for a man. And I'll tell you, at my height, like I said, I'm just shy of 6'2". When I go into a crowded room, like our church holds like 1,500 people per service, right? And we have 4 services each weekend. But when I'm in a room full of 1,500 people, I can see over the heads of 99% of the people in the room. Wait, I can never be in control, so let Jesus take the wheel? Yep. Thomas says, are you sure we have free will? My cat forces me to open my window even when it's freezing outside. Well, you've given over your free will to the evil cat god. Carla says, we do not fight each other over God and who he loves more than loving our neighbors, and God is working together to better the whole instead of the few. We do not fight each other over God and who he loves more, rather than loving our neighbors and God and working together to better the whole instead of the few. I think you mean we do fight each other over God, honestly. We fight each other over God all the time. The United Methodist Church is about to split in two because, or if they haven't already, because we fight over God and who he loves more. Because that's what that split, the United Methodist Church is all, is kind of, half of the church is taking this pro-LGBTQ position, and there's nothing wrong with being loving towards that community and caring about that community, but there's a difference between that and lying to them. And it would be lying to them to say, oh no, God's cool with that. Trek9, I believe you have a unique perspective being an atheist. What changed in you? Honestly, it was primarily the prime mover thing as far as from an intellectual standpoint. I believed that there was a God before I became a Christian. But I did, I started looking at cosmology, the creation of the universe, all that. And I was like, you know what? Something caused all this. And there's no getting around it, because even whether you want to, the problem is you always suffer from what people sometimes refer to as infinite regress, right? No matter what you do, no matter what kind of scheme you come up with, you run into a problem of infinite regress. Something had to be the ultimate source. Something had to be the beginning. And that's just a logical necessity because of the fact that there is no such, this is, one of those, when you talk about logic, one thing you cannot do is break logic. It's simply not possible. And so one of the things that is a logical absolute is that there is no way to actualize an infinite. It is not possible. Because an infinite in and of itself is a logical absurdity, right? There's no such thing as an infinitely long line. There's no, you can have a boundless line, so a sphere, but you can't have an infinite line. The problem is that now let's say that people want to argue that time is cyclical, right? The Big Bang, Big Crunch type of thing, where the universe expands and it contracts, starts over, expands, contracts, time repeats. Now, the problem with that is that it cannot have happened an infinite number of times, right? No matter what kind of theory you come up with, you run into this problem. If you want to argue that, for example, colliding brains sparked the Big Bang, M theory, basically. Now, those colliding brains started where? How? Where did they come from? We don't know, right? But no matter what you do, you always go back to some kind of primal source. Hence, God exists. God may not be what we think God is, but God exists. I can say that with an absolute certainty because something created, something started. Now, then you got to go from that to it being intelligent and all that, and that's a whole other thing. But that's what started me on the path of going from atheist to theist and eventually to Christian. I already pulls guard duty of some kind when you're in the military. I never thought of it as punishment. Punishment is when they restrict you to submarine while in port. Well, or you see, you were a submariner. That's part of the difference. But like if you're a landlubber like myself, who was an MP in the Army, guard duty sometimes was given, shall we say, to people that were less than diligent with their duties as a form of punishment. Kind of like KP is also sometimes given as a punishment. That being said, there are people whose careers are guard duty. Brian says, is still National Roundtable still around? Right here, Brian. Good to see you, my friend. Dan says, do you think whales or dolphins are communicating in a way that we could one day translate? I don't know. I don't know that, I know that people want to argue that dolphins and whales are just as intelligent as humans. That was a big, big thing back in the 80s. That's why Star Trek 4 is the way that it is. That was the way people thought about whales back then. Quite frankly, I think of whales and dolphins as animals, and I don't think of humans as animals. So there's that. Chrono says, son of a bitch, Roundtable, why no exploding things and driving tanks? You have free will to play games. I do, but Sunday mornings, this particular live stream, church life live streams are reserved primarily for theological discussions, but discussions about life in general. And Brian says, this came up randomly in my recommended videos. Well, I'm glad that it came up in your recommended videos, Brian. I haven't talked to you in forever. And it's funny. Yeah, I've been doing weekly live streams for a couple of months now on this channel. I actually have another channel that I started about 2 years ago called Anti-Trekker, which we talk about Star Trek, Star Wars, and stuff. And it's actually doing pretty good. About 13,000 subs there. Let's see. There's plenty of, let's see. Peter says, they have to check out the spaceship first, Anti-Trigger. Bird of Prey 5, but the Galcon exploded without issue, and the spaceship did splash down comfortably. Well, that's good. So Bird just said it was successful, so yeah. How far is Anti-Trigger behind the trats? Well, let's see. That's 9:51. It is currently 10:03, so about 12 minutes. But no, so in other words, about typical, except the problem is, let's see, where did that, there we go. Tom says, what do you think? And sends me a link. I hate it when you guys do that. So Jean-Luc Picard beams into San Francisco via public transporter station. I've seen that before in one of the trailers, as far as, yeah, people have these like teleportation, they're not even transporters, they're like teleportation chambers. Interesting. And so we'll see. We'll see. It's Matthew says, it's Admiral Saval. Good to see you, Matthew. Oh, crap. Can I be overridden? You could. Oh, wow. I'm a sim. You are, in a sense. One of the best examples of Yahweh overriding free will is in the Old Testament when he hardened Pharaoh's heart during his confrontations with Moses. Exactly. That's why I said Pharaoh in Exodus. You and I are saying the same thing. Well, I'm 6'5", but I come from a tall family on my mother's side. Yeah, well, most people, your general height, weight, stuff like that does tend to, you have basically certain genetic traits that tend to make people taller or shorter. You hear that, ladies? I'm above average. Yeah, barely. Let's see. That's what makes the simulation theory. That's what the simulation theory says. Rational. Well, Elon Musk agree with you. I don't know. But as far as the simulation theory, here's the thing. The simulation theory is an interesting one because the simulation theory posits that if, in fact, computers could get to the point where you could create a self-aware sentient program and a simulation of the entire universe, that will in fact happen. And if that does in fact happen, it will happen millions upon millions of times as everybody on the internet and stuff are running these simulations and stuff, right? And if that's the case, then it is much more likely that you are a simulation than you are the real person. And how could you know the difference? The answer is you couldn't. And so it's an interesting idea. It's basically like the Matrix kind of thing. But the problem is it's a pointless thing to discuss because it's not simulation theory. It's a simulation hypothesis at best, just like when I say M theory should be the M hypothesis, because there's absolutely zero way to test it or prove it unless the creator of said program starts entering in the code and so that they can demonstrate that it's actually a thing. Then how do we know if the actions that we take as our own and not God interfering with us? One could argue that God most likely made Hitler murder those people for some sick reason. No, one could not argue that, because here's the thing, Valor, and this is part of faith, that's where it comes from. But for example, let's suppose that for a moment, let's presuppose that the Bible is in fact an accurate document of God's intent. Does Hitler line up with the Bible? The answer is no. All right. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense as far as why would God want Hitler to murder, in fact, why would God have Hitler murder the chosen people of God, the Jews? That doesn't make a lot of sense. There's actually some interesting case to be made that in some recent historical events, God did put his finger in things, because look at the nation state of Israel and what it's gone through in the last 50 years, and people deny that there's anything miraculous about that. I'm sorry, look at what what the Jews have done since World War II, and it boggles the imagination. And yet people say, no, God, that's just pretend. Ha! My family is a giant. I'm 6'3", my brother's 6'6", and my dad is 6'7". Wow, you are a big family. Dan says Night Watch was a group of people in Babylon 5 that worked for a part of Earth Force government, gave them information on stuff going on at the station. Okay, but that's not the kind of Night Watch we were talking about. Cody says, I'm 6'3", 152. I'm pretty average height among Midwestern corn-fed goofs. I would dare say if you're 6'3", you are definitely above average, my friend. And so maybe corn-fed goofs are just taller. I don't know, but that's weird. 152 pounds? Damn, you're thin. I'm jealous. Matthew says, do you hate the LGBTQ community? Not at all. I don't hold any grudge against the LGBTQ community. I don't have, and I certainly don't judge them for what they do, because most of them, at least, are not Christians. Now, if someone wants to say I'm, this proud member of the LGBTQ community and they're a Christian, I'm going to call them out on their hypocrisy, right? Because that's what we are called to do. We are not called to judge people that are not part of the Christian community, but we are called to hold each other accountable as fellow Christians. And so what the United Methodist Church, the people that are quote unquote siding with the LGBTQ community, what they're saying is not biblical. Now, that being said, people that take the opposite extreme, like Westboro Baptist Church are just as unbiblical as the incredibly liberal United Methodist Church. So, there are two extremes here. The truth is that as a Christian, you are called to love humanity, all of humanity, without reservation. That if you see someone who needs help, you are to help that person. It does not matter whether or not they're a Christian. It does not matter what color their skin is. It does not matter what their sexual preference is. And in fact, the Bible flat out says that, right? It says there is no gender. There is no race. None of that matters. What matters is helping out your fellow man. God loves everyone. It doesn't matter what your color is, what your sexual preference is, what any of that is. But God also set the standard for here's how you are to behave if you want to basically, be on my good side, so to speak. And here's what you have to do if you want to at least not be condemned. And so, and basically trying to rationalize and encourage sinful behavior ain't in that list. Carlos says, do you believe what we go through is to help guide or teach us what is yet to come, or to prepare us for later in life, even after death? Do you believe what we go through is to help guide or teach us what is yet to come, or to prepare us for later life or even after death? Yes and no. Here's the thing. I think that sometimes what we go through, it may not benefit us at all, right? So for example, all the crap that I've been going through this last year, I may never see any benefit from this whatsoever. I may die penniless and alone 2 years from now, right? I may end up, because I get fired from my job, I end up homeless, I end up on the streets, I end up dead, and that's the end of Michael J. Crawford, right? So I didn't benefit from that. However, let's suppose that some of you watch me going through this. You see me in my struggles and holding on to my faith, being positive, trying to, look at what's going on with the Phantom Menace. I'm like the only person in the Phantom Menace that has said, well, the Rise of Skywalker wasn't that bad, and I got crucified. But you know what? Did I let that get me down? Not at all. And I've been on shows now where it's been 4 and 5 on 1, people ganging up and harshly criticizing everything I had to say. And did I get frustrated? Did I get angry? Did I get mean? No. Right? So people see that, and let's say that just a couple of people are inspired by that and they live a better life because of it. Well, maybe that's why. Or maybe it was just dumb luck. Dan says, like Transformers, do you believe that there could be a planet with robotic life? No. Time is linear, always moving forward. That is true. But there are people that do not believe that. And I'm just saying, even if that were true, you still run into infinite regress. Just realized how rude my last comment was. I meant no disrespect, and I apologize for it sounding like that. What did you say, Valor, that was so rude? Because if you did... how do we know the actions are not God? No. I don't think... Here's the thing, Valor. And let me make this clear to anybody here, because if there's somebody here, because we have a little more than we had last week on the Sunday morning stream. If you're new to this, no, as long as a question comes from genuine curiosity, there is no such thing as a disrespectful question. Unless you're saying something like, so why do you believe in fairy tales? That's a disrespectful question. But to say, it seems to me like the Bible is hypocritical because this, and this, and this, that's not, as long as you're coming from a legitimate place where you're seeking information, that's not disrespectful. So you if you're being disrespectful. Live with Matthew says, hey, Rational Roundtable, all happy Sunday morning. How you doing, my friend? DJ is here. I was talking about you earlier, DJ. Nothing good, but, I was talking about you. DJ says, there goes Rational Roundtable bragging about the Anti-Tricker channel. Well, that's, kind of. Phone box teleporter. Yeah, that's kind of what it looks like. If you look in the Picard trailers, they show these, they look like airport metal detectors, and people just walk through them and instantly are transported somewhere else. How that box knows where to transport them, well, it must be connected to another box somewhere else, like it's the Midtown Express or something. But if you have these metal detector instantaneous transporters, why the hell are the kids getting on a school bus? Why don't they just go down to that same spot where the school bus picked them up and have one of those metal detector boxes teleport them to school? You see, that's the problem. They don't think these things out. And so if you have instantaneous metal detector transporters everywhere, why the hell do you need a shuttlecraft under any circumstance? Unless the power for the entire planet goes out. Sorry. A little Star Trek rage. And just a few more days until Picard. Mr. Miles says, why don't you see us as animals? Scientifically speaking, we are, but saying we aren't an animal wouldn't be saying we aren't mammals either. Do you think that all mammals have to be animals? No, well, I mean, if you were to classify the human being, you would, obviously you would classify us as a great ape if you're trying to see it that way. However, I do believe that humans are, in fact, unique in the animal kingdom. I do believe we are the only ones with the intellectual abilities that we do. I believe that mankind and mankind alone is, in fact, created in the image of God. Now, do I think that we have biological functions like animals do? Yes. But that doesn't mean we're animals. And by the way, Mr. Miles, it's kind of funny because you teach kids that they're nothing but animals, and they behave like animals. And society decays. If you can't explain how something was created, do you think it went back in time and caused the events to create itself? If you can't explain how something was created, do you think it went back in time and caused the events to create itself? Well, I've talked about it before, Dan. I do think that the Bible actually gives a clue to that. I think that God being something that is beyond space-time, past, present, future, all the same, right? But God actually within space-time created God. The Father created the Son. The Son ascended to heaven. And in my opinion, and this is simply my opinion, I am not saying this is scriptural fact, and some would say it's even blasphemous to suggest, but in my opinion, Son comes up to heaven, becomes Spirit, and eventually Father. Once he's Father, he existed before and after. He's the Alpha and the Omega. He was there at the beginning and the end. And at that point, he existed throughout history, and guess what? That means that he caused it. And so it is cyclical, but it's not, it works within the time frame. And, basically you have to go outside of any type of universal standard in order to do that. You could know the difference. You could know the difference, rational computer and program. Well, didn't end. I sometimes get leaflets through the door from a religious organization. Underneath their logo, it says God is love. Yeah, that's a very popular thing to say. And you know what? I love that people say God is love. But then they forget that that's not all. They say, oh, God is love, and therefore love is God, right? And therefore all God is love, and blah, blah, blah. But then we want to throw our definition of love on there. And that means that, hey, you know what? That means that God loves you no matter what. And that means it's okay for you to do whatever the hell you want. No, that's not what love is. All right? Love isn't enabling. Love isn't universal permission to do everything. Because you know what? A parent loves their child, and if a child is about to grab a red-hot poker, the parent is going to stop their child. Or at least tell their child, don't do that. And when the child does it anyway and hurts themselves, the parents are going to go, well, I told you not to do that. If Hitler truly believed and repented for his sins, could he go to heaven? Yeah. Does your church have a live stream podcast? If so, you post a link. I'd love to give it a look. Yes, they actually have a YouTube channel. They post their sermons, and actually, trust them, I've been behind on it, but I've been meaning to repost them on this very channel, so you'll be able to see them here very soon. My great uncle Henry was 6'7". Well, he was definitely a great uncle then. Corn-fed goofs. Hey, I resemble that remark. I didn't say that remark first. I read it. Just saying that. How tall are you, DJ? Just wondering. The thing that I remember with Pharaoh is that first choice to harden his own heart. That he first chose to harden his own heart, and God only hardened it after that fact. His punishment Pharaoh was complete. Well, yeah, Pharaoh actually committed, first of all, Egypt had already committed massive crimes against the Jews, right? It's not like Pharaoh wasn't a bad, he was a bad apple from a line of bad apples, but yeah. We need to be accepting of LGBT community no matter our religion, accepting but not necessarily condone. Yes, there's a difference between, and that's the thing. The ironic thing is that you have people with a political agenda who talk about the term tolerance without understanding what tolerance even means. I agree with them. Everybody, we should approach all people with tolerance, meaning that even if you do something that I may find offensive, even if you do something that I think is morally reprehensible, even if you do things, if you represent something that I wholeheartedly disagree with, I'm going to tolerate you. Okay? That's tolerance. And by the way, I'm going to even extend that. The Christian standard is higher than that and says, I'm going to love you. If I see that you need help in any way, shape, or form, I am going to help you in any way, shape, or form that I am able. I am not going to just tolerate you. I am going to love you. But what they don't want tolerance or even love. They actually want acceptance, right? They want me to say, no, what you do is good. No, I'm not going to accept or condone that which I disagree with. But I will love you and I will respect you. But I'm not going to simply change my worldview because you happen to live a lifestyle that is contrary to it. Sorry. But they expect, and they'll say, well, they're trying to force their beliefs down our throat. Nobody's trying to force their beliefs down your throat. You know what? When a Christian organization shows up and gives you a flyer and says, hey, let me talk about Jesus, that is not forcing anything because you have the absolute right to say no. The end. And so that's not forcing. Forcing, and that's what the First Amendment is all about, is the government doesn't have the right to establish a national religion and compel you to be a member of it. That is forcing, right? And the ironic thing is what is going on is that certain secular beliefs are being forced on the religious. But that's okay because we're right. That's the argument, is that we're right, therefore it's okay for us to force you to believe something, right? So, perfect example. Personally, I have no problem with only a very minute exception to the theory of evolution, right? I generally don't care. That's not a fight that I'm willing to have anyway. But the only thing I would ever say about evolution that I have a problem with is when people throw things like unguided into the mix. So we don't know that it's unguided. That's an unwarranted assumption. All you can say is that there is genetic mutation and natural selection. As far as when we say random mutation, well, maybe we can't predict it, but that doesn't mean necessarily that God can't, or that, so I think that you need to be careful about making unwarranted assumptions. And by the way, that's how science is supposed to be. Science is supposed to be agnostic, neither assuming God or assuming no God. It should make no assumptions. But I digress. If Christians don't want their child to learn about evolution because they feel that it violates their religious beliefs, guess what? The First Amendment says they have the right to hold those beliefs, but we want to take that right away. I don't agree with that. Even though I may think they're stupid, I don't agree with that. Even though I may disagree with them, I'm sorry. Everybody has the right to believe what they want. And even though you might say, but it's dangerous, you're assuming you're right. And that's the biggest arrogance of it. You are assuming you're right. You could be wrong. Now, from what I've seen, and I'm not an expert. Not all of us, by the way, and this is another funny thing. You say you might laugh at people for having faith in their God when you have just as much faith in humans, flawed, ordinary humans. What do I mean by that? Because 99.9% of people are not experts on evolution. 99.9% of people have not conducted the research, have not done the experiments, have not dug up the fossils, right? You do not know jack. The only thing you know is what experts have told you. Now, again, I'm not arguing against evolution because, quite frankly, I don't really have a problem with it. But you're suggesting that you are 100% right when you don't know any more than the person who has faith knows. You are taking it on faith that scientists X, Y, and Z are feeding you correct information. They might not be. They could, granted, I know some people think there's a huge conspiracy, or it could just be some unfortunate assumptions made in the theory that are fundamentally flawed. Don't know, but you don't know that you're right. You just think you're right, and you think that because you're right, you have the right to force other people to capitulate to your way of thinking. That's just as wrong as them saying that they should force you to believe in X religion. And so that's a problem, all right? And so I don't like the fact that we're always, both sides, trying to force the other to capitulate. If somebody believes differently than you, they have the right to. They absolutely have the right to believe differently than you. And I don't agree with, and I'm sorry, I know that there are people in this chat right now that are Christian believers that believe in things that I don't. And we could have a big old debate about that. Well, I'm not going to do it right now, but we could. But they absolutely have the right to believe that. I also believe that there are plenty of atheists in this chat right now that obviously believe things that I don't, or believe that certain things that I believe are false. And they have the right to believe that. Period. End of that discussion. Now, we can debate all day long, but that doesn't mean that one side or the other gets to dictate to the other. No matter how reasonable you think that dictatorship is, it's wrong. I believe you treat people how I want to be treated. I believe you treat people how I want to be treated. Well, thank you. Thank you. Help me with church life. Well, I'm glad about that, Carlo. Any help I can give, I want to. Turnistan will live on even when you are gone. Thank you, Zachary, and I hope you're right. Opinions are like arseholes. Everyone has one. They all stink. Thinking of that saying when someone crucifies you. No, you know what? All I think is, you know what? You guys are worked up way too much over Star Wars. Honestly, when we argue about the rise of Skywalker, I think, you're getting way too worked up about Star Wars. Old Testament makes me smile. Okay. The idea of original sin, the idea of being born sick and commanded to get better is unfair, putting it mildly. Okay. Well, the problem is there are differing ideas on original sin. The idea of original sin is that sin was introduced into the world via Adam. And some people are actually through Eve, and some people agree with it. Some people don't. Some people think that it's a metaphor. Some people don't, etc. But it also does have to do with the fact that we are naturally a sinful being. And yes, we are in need of a savior. So you may not like that, but I don't know why you think it's unfair. If mankind has made this world a sick place and there's a cure, why is the cure a bad thing and unfair? The height average should really be broken down by region. 6'3" in Midwest America is pretty normal, but if you go to Central Asia, he's a giant. That's true. DJ says, well, since I woke up late, I will have to watch a replay to figure out all the bad things he said about me. Only one bad thing. Bluetooth phone box transporter, you tell your communicator. You tell your computer. Well, but how does the communicator know? Does it just know by your proximity? And do you tell, because since when does the communicator have like a built-in Siri in it? Because at least in next gen, all the communicator did was communicate. Just saying. Maybe the shuttles are greener. Maybe those metal detector transporters were created after the short trek. I don't know, but it just seems kind of silly to me. Why would shuttles be in need at all at that point? And so, yes, I'm ranting about the transporters. Mr. Ross says, my dog is an animal. If you won't disagree with that, I'm sure. She's better behaved than a lot of people who are told they're more than animals. And why does your dog behave? Does your dog behave because your dog is naturally inclined to behave? Or did your dog learn to behave from its master? God loved the 60s. Okay. The Simpsons had an episode set in the future. You go to the airport, instead of getting on an airplane, you go through a checklist and walk through a gate and it teleports you. Well, there you go. The Simpsons predicted Star Trek Picard. Bird of Prey, what's happening after Rational Roundtable? Bird of Prey says, don't make me defend Picard, but Picard takes place at least 10 years after the short trek. Maybe it wasn't in wide use yet. Or maybe it's just stupid. DJ says, I'm 6 foot. Okay. Well, then you're short. In the Simpsons episode I mentioned with the transporter gates, the airport, some people still took airplanes because they were allergic to something, couldn't use it if pregnant. Okay. The only issue with the God creating Son that the Bible states that the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit were present from the beginning and that all things that were created. Yes, but actually that's not a problem if the Son ascends and goes outside of space and time. That's the thing. If you could actually exit time-space, then would the past, present, and future even be a meaningful concept at that point? God is also a mass murderer, murdering male babies or murder vast amounts of people with a flood. Well, you could argue about the flood, but as far as murdering babies, yeah, God didn't do that. The Egyptians did. So not sure what you're talking about. Or are you talking about when he... I'm trying to remember what, but there's some pretty brutal acts in the Old Testament. I'm not going to lie. But here's the thing. Was it for a specific purpose? And let me ask you this, Valerie, and this legit question here. Let's say you're playing The Sims and you want to, you realize that this sucks. You broke the world. It doesn't work anymore. So you wipe it out and start over. Did you just murder all those people? Good, legit question. Why, Matthew? Rational were created by the Son, and that is nothing, and that nothing was created or created apart from the Son. Yes. I have an issue with tolerance, however, I'm working on it. Ms. Brown says, Lore Reloaded is a Christian and open about it, proud of it. He did a video where he's pretending to beat off. He was acting more like an animal than I've seen Luke act. Well, I think that video of Lore was in bad taste. Honestly, and this is coming from, yes, I actually participated in helping him make videos like the lore and drag thing, but I think that was taking it a bit far. That's a line I would not have crossed there. Let's see. Do you have a YouTube addiction? I say you're watching a church live stream trying to argue in 200 characters. I say no, it's a fun diction. I have dug up fossils. They're quite abundant at some beaches. For any beginner, the beaches between Chartmouth and Lane Regis are the best and safest place to try fossil hunting. That's in the UK. Yes, but here's the thing, Peter. Are you an expert? Can you identify any fossil from what you come up with? Can you show me how it is? Are you an expert on the dating methods involved so that you can date said fossil? And can you tell me where is it in an evolutionary scale? Blah 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 blah. You get what I'm saying. And maybe you are, because I don't know. Maybe you're an evolutionary biologist. I have no idea if I have any evolutionary biologists in the stream, but that is not a common profession. You're still taking the word of it. Like, for all you know, the thing you dug up died a week ago. In which case it's kind of icky, but yeah. Dan says, what's your opinion when someone refers to something from the Bible as sounding like a magic trick? Okay. If that's what they, and that's the thing is that I understand that, because God in the Old Testament and Christ in the New Testament clearly do some things that are a little out there, right? Healing and calling down thunder and stuff like that, right? The stuff that happens in the Bible is kind of wow. Even the water into wine thing, right? So I can certainly understand that. However, sounding like a magic trick, I think, is cheapening it a bit. The miraculous and magic are two different things, because here's the thing about magic, at least in the modern context. Magic is creating the illusion of something without actually doing anything, right? So, ooh, I'm going to saw this woman in half, but what you don't know is that there's actually a woman in the lower section of the box that's hiding and all that. And so then you put her back together and look, everything's groovy, right? No, people drank the wine that Jesus made. People actually lived for years after Jesus healed them, right? And stuff like that. So there's a difference between doing tricks and impacting people, changing lives, healing disease and stuff like that. It's very different. You've never seen, what's his name, Chris Angel Mind Freak, go to a leper colony and, help people regrow limbs or shed their disease, or go into the cancer ward of a hospital and heal all the babies that are sick, right? No. You see him walk on water or float between buildings and all that, and it's all done with camera tricks and stuff like that. So, yeah, you've seen that kind of crap. You've not seen him actually do something that's, miraculous. Peter just says Rational Roundtable. I'm not sure. Oh, plenty more things to get upset at. Lots of things to get upset at. Death Star chunks. Actually, funny thing is that you say that, because I think I definitively proved, and I might have to do a video specifically about it, that yes, there were Death Star chunks. Rambling Canuck says, the part I find interesting is how the science community will defend the theory even when a fellow scientist dispute it, and most times they say the old is right and the new is wrong. Well, here's the thing about the scientific community. There's a lot of, just like any community, there's diversity there, but truly, if you are a scientist, then you should want to, you should understand that the ultimate goal of science is to disprove every scientific theory, right? That's what you try to do. You try to disprove the theory. And if you fail, the theory stands, but you continue to try to disprove it. Because I can't remember, was it Einstein or someone said, hey, if you did it and it worked 1,000,000 times, but it failed once, you disproved the theory, right? And that's the whole point of science, is to try and get closer to the truth. But the problem is, instead of getting closer to the truth, science has almost become its own religion to some, to where you now hear, and it's becoming increasingly common for people to say, oh, well, we know X, Y, and Z because of some scientific equation or whatever. As soon as you say, we know this is true in science, I know that you have rejected scientific principles. Because that's not how science works. That's not what science is meant to be. Science is meant to be a pursuit of the truth, but you're never going to get there. It's a never-ending pursuit of the truth. As soon as you say, well, and in fact, I've even heard, like, it's so funny to hear these naturalists, like, some of the people that have TV shows and stuff, that will say, oh, well, we know that this animal evolved this trait so that they can do this. Really? So evolution had a goal for that animal? No. And so it's just boggles my mind that we give science, in some cases we give science some very godly attributes that science has, and at the same time, like evolution. Ooh, yeah, evolution is its own thing. The universe is a living thing and all this. And even though we want to laugh at the theists because they believe in God, they're so stupid, right? But a true scientist doesn't make those kinds of assumptions. A true scientist wants to try to disprove theories, and a true scientist understands that a theory, while is more than just a guess, is still a theory. And then, by the way, a guess is not a theory at all. A guess is a hypothesis at best. And that's why, there are scientists that think that string theory and M theory are like the answer to everything, and other scientists that literally laugh at the string theorists and M theorists because they know that string theory and M theory are not theories at all. Live with Matthew says, original sin was through Adam alone. Romans 5:12. Eve was deceived, but Adam fully closed to sin. But even apart from original sin, all people still chose sin. That's true. Location services on the comms. I'm trying to make sense of it, plus location search. I'm sure that they're not going to bother to explain it. They're just going to say, oh, look how cool this visual effect is. They're not going to say, oh, look, these were invented 5 years ago to take care of the problem of why we didn't see it in the short trek. And you know what? We're probably going to see shuttles, even though those frickin' metal detector transporters completely negate the need for shuttles. My dog behaves well because she was inclined to do it. I'm pretty sure breed plays some role in it, but she's naturally sweetheart and not mean bone in her body. But you see, there you just brought up another interesting fact about dogs. Controlled genetics. Every dog is the victim, if you will, of controlled genetics. We breed certain traits into the dogs. We're very careful about that. That's why golden retrievers make horrible guard dogs, because golden retrievers are naturally, or not naturally, but artificially, because of their genetics, because of their man-manipulated genetics, inclined to be passive towards humans. However, German Shepherds make great guard dogs. And that's because they are not bred the same way as golden retrievers. So, why the she-male thing with Bird of Prey 5? It wasn't funny the first 100 times. I don't understand. I don't know where the she-male thing came up with. I mean, I take full credit for the Frank and Freddy thing, because yes, I started that. I apologize, Bird, but I did start that one. But the she-male thing, I don't know where that came from. And also, I'm still pretty sure that Bird of Prey actually does have some kind of mafia connections. Live with Matthew says, the shuttle is obviously a public school funded thing. Yeah, exactly. But what about, wait, but what about the utopian, we don't use money and everything is, oh wait, but this is the corrupt Trump era of Starfleet, so never mind. Okay. When God kills a creation, it's not murder, it's abortion. Actually, it's not, here's the thing. I think that's, first of all, that doesn't even make sense, but whatever. Because abortion is a very specific thing. That's killed in utero. If it's not killed in utero, it's not abortion. But but if God kills a creation, does God have the right to do so? I think that's a legit question. If God created everything, does God have the right to destroy it? And before you're real quick to answer, because you're in that creation, if you create a program on a computer that has avatars running around like The Sims, do you have the right to delete that program? Because it's the same thing. Is it the same person with 10 accounts doing she spam? I don't know. I'm not sure if you're talking about the she-male thing. No, I don't know exactly where. You'd have to ask Bird of Prey. If they didn't have blood of a goat over their door, then the first male child was murdered. Yes. And it wasn't murdered, though. And you need to understand the difference between murder and dying. Murder is killing with malice. All right. If God put, with the spirit of death in the Passover event, that was not murder. And I understand that some people think it is, that all killing is murder. Well, then you don't understand the definition of murder and kill. I'm glad you didn't cross the cross-dressing line. Well, but I helped Laura make that one video. Do you like the song, Oh Lord, Won't You Buy Me a Mercedes-Benz? I've never heard that song. The reason that for Noah's flood story was due to the mark of Cain and wiping out the evil after Cain and Abel. Well, Zachary, I'm not debating the reason for the Noah's flood. What I'm saying is that some people believe that Noah's flood was a historical event, and other people think that it was more metaphorical. Did you leave Just Cause playing? When I went to bed at 3 a.m., Steam said you were still playing. Yeah, actually, it was funny. When I came to sit down at my computer, I realized it was still running. So, yeah, that was my bad. I could call down the thunder after eating my chili. Different kind of thunder. And anemones look like coiled snail shells, are the most common found on beaches. Yeah, I've seen their shells. I've had some in the past. Not sure which point is. Not an archaeologist, though. Well, it wouldn't be an archaeologist, but I understand what you mean. Serious question. Was the book Revelation written in the Holy Roman Church era? No, the book of Revelation was written, trying to remember. I believe around the year 100. If that, I think it might be a little earlier than that, but I'm not 100% sure. But I think it's a first century book. I never played The Sims. Well, okay. Scientists get famous for disproving their peers. If the tests are repeatable, provable, then they will win the day. Yes. And that's the thing, and that's and on that we have no disagreement. What makes a scientist is to like, for example, if I could disprove relativity right now, I would be a world-renowned scientist, right? But I can't, and I wouldn't even know how. But but if you if you if you do a test that helps reinforce it, well, kids do that all the time, where you learn about various tests of different theories, and you do those tests over and over and over, and you always come up with predictable results. That's how science class in many schools work, is where you replicate tests that were created to try and disprove a theory. What do you think of this, where someone says something and it thunders, and someone says you're upset, you've upset God or maybe made God angry? Well, I see that as what it is, usually a joke. I hope that you are. I hope that you are well like that T-shirt. What's your opinion about a theory I heard once that the ancient gods are actually God, but different aspects of them given different names? As far as the pagan gods, like if you'd like the Roman and Greco-Roman gods, I don't buy that. As far as because they're given too specific of personalities and everything to really be aspects of an omnipotent God. But that being said, I'm not totally sold out on the idea that they didn't exist. I actually think that it's possible that some of them did exist in similar fashion as what we saw in Star Trek with Apollo. Or that they were maybe not God, and not aspects of God, but perhaps angelic type beings. And so I'm not saying that, I'm not saying I believe that. I'm saying that I could believe that if evidence came up that maybe they did exist. It's funny, I was accused of being an extreme FM Phantom Menace, I assume, based because I'm disgusted with the SJW meddling in the Witcher series. I don't want it to fail, but I won't watch it. Well, I'll tell you this. I have not... I've not played the Witcher games. Now, I did like the Witcher series, but it did seem funny to me that half the people in the world of the... And Mrs. Antrager notices too. It seems about half the people in the world of The Witcher are black women. And I was like, is it just me, or is there a lot of black people in the world of The Witcher? Which seems really weird, considering that The Witcher is supposed to take place in some kind of medieval setting, and generally speaking, you didn't have that kind of racial mixing back then. But I didn't know, maybe that's how it is in the game, right? So I don't know if that was SJW meddling or if that's just the way the game was written. Put Rational Roundtable if you want him to see your comments. Yes, thank you. If somebody's putting comments they want me to read, if you don't put at Rational Roundtable in it, I can't keep up. So please do. Do you like the saying, when God closes a door, he opens a window? I think that there's some truth to that. But the question, here's the problem. We don't look for that window, or we don't look for the open door. We're just sitting around waiting for God to do what we want him to do. And that's a big problem, is that instead of seeking God's will in our lives, we seek our will from God. That's what we tend to do as humans. We say, God, please take care of my problems this specific way today. Instead of saying, God, what is the avenue I'm supposed, we should be taking action to resolve issues, but we should be also consulting God, trying to make sure we're following the path that he has for us. But we don't do that. Instead, we're always basically expecting God to be Santa Claus. Evolution can have bad mouthpieces sometimes. A lot of people think they understand it, but really don't. I blame the ape to man linear line. Yeah, the ape to man linear line did not do evolution any favors, that's for sure. I believe God and evolution and the universe is billions of years old. Well, I tend to agree with you on that. But I know that there are plenty of Christians that think that the universe is 6,000 years old, and that's fine, right? And the interesting thing, what I usually say to those people, if you are a young Earth creationist, is, do I deny that God could have created the universe 6,000 years ago? Not at all. If that's what he wanted it to be, that's absolutely possible. Does that mean that God then buried fossils with the intent of fooling humanity? And if they say, well, that was Satan that did that, well, I don't know. But, we can have that discussion. But I think that currently the evidence points to a much older universe than 6,000 years. I believe Satan is the true hero of the Bible, says Brian, as he is the only one challenging the fascistic rule of the narcissistic, psychopathic man-child who is driven mad after an eternity of isolation. Wow. Okay, well, you're entitled to that opinion, and I know there are plenty of Satanists in the world, so you have fun with that. I think that is, because Satan doesn't want anything to help humans. He wants to destroy them. So I'm not sure why you would be on the side of the person that really wants you to go down in flames, almost literally, but yeah. The meaning of the saying, the meaning of that saying, the implication that is that although things don't always go according to our plans, that doesn't mean God won't have some other way to fulfill our desires. Yes. Peter says, sea urchins have a long history existing from 450 million years ago right up to today, along with sponges that once lived similar conditions across underwater Britain. Okay. And here's the thing, though. And if I were, I'm not a young Earth creationist, prefacing it with that. How do you know that? And serious question, Peter. Honestly, I would appreciate an honest answer. How do you know that sea urchins have been existing the way they are for 450 million years? Now, don't tell me, well, it's common knowledge. Did you read it in a book? Or did you do research and carbon date sea urchin fossils yourself? That's the point of the faith statement that I made earlier. They turned Triss black and Yennefer Brown. I know that sounds bad. In the books, both are white because of SJW agendas. It's like turning Luke and Picard black. Okay, I did not know that particularly, and I don't know how they were described in the books. I've never read any of the Witcher books, so. But yeah, I don't, if they changed it, yeah, I got a problem with that. But why they changed it, yeah, I don't know. Oh no, you started the Frank and Freddy thing. Yeah, I did. It was a long time ago. I made a joke in one of his live streams that basically, he was talking about how awesome Frank Sinatra was. And I made a joke saying, fun fact, and someone was asking, he was talking about Frank Sinatra. He was the greatest singer ever. And people were arguing that Freddie Mercury was actually the greatest singer. And Bird didn't know any of Freddie Mercury's work. And so people were kind of explaining what Queen was about and stuff like that in the chat. And then I just threw in the off-the-cuff remark, fun fact, Frank Sinatra and Freddie Mercury were actually lovers, and that's where it all started. Remains of the Death Star in Star Wars canon, comics, and novels. Princess Leia gave peace to her people who were from her planet but off-world at the time of the destruction. I don't know about that, but any extended universe stuff isn't canon anymore. But I will say that if you simply watch Return of the Jedi, you can see large chunks of the Death Star falling towards Endor after the explosion. You want to see and feel fossils yourself. Well, you know what? Handing me a fossil doesn't prove anything. All that shows me is that, okay, I see what looks like the outline of a skeleton in a rock. That doesn't prove to me that it was around 450 million years ago. All that proves to me is that I see the outline of a skeleton in a rock. You understand what I'm saying? And believe me, I'm not arguing that it's not a 450 million year old fossil. I'm simply saying that, like when people say, well, I don't see the evidence that God exists. Well, you know what? You hand me a rock with a skeleton in it. That's not proof to me that this was a living thing 450 million years ago. I might say, well, I would say it could have been a living thing sometime in the past. But A, how do I know someone didn't just carve that into the rock? And if I found it in nature, okay, let's say, okay, I could logically extrapolate that maybe a creature died there and somehow its bones got fossilized and everything. How do I know how old that is? Right? So show me, and so how do I know that? Well, you use this date. Well, how do I know that date method is accurate? And you see how it goes. The problem is there are very few people that actually have firsthand knowledge of all of the processes and everything that go behind dating something and proving that this is a living thing from 450 million years ago, right? Very few people that actually firsthand have that information. Everybody else takes it on faith that those people weren't lying to you. Would you guys like to join me after this? I plan to play Fallout 4 VR. Well, there you go. So Wesley's going to do a stream playing Fallout 4 if you want to join that after I'm done. Ms. Ron says, you can take most of the credit for Frank and Freddy thing, but I was the one who originally asked him if he thought about Freddie had badmouthed him. Well, yeah, we see that I started the actual they were a thing. You brought up Freddie Mercury, but yeah, I'm the one that created the beast that became Frank and Freddy. But if you want to take credit for it, that's fine. I just seen that happen. If God made creation, he will give you a chance to save if God made the creation, he will give you a chance to save yourself, but at the same time, he has the right to destroy it. I agree. But yeah. What? You don't know Janis Joplin? What? Oh, not sure what you're talking about there, DJ. I feel better about Spock's guesses than anyone else's facts. Yeah. Where did Lord Reloaded get the dress? I don't know. It's funny because we had thought about doing that sketch before I actually met him face to face. And so he got that dress before he flew out to Oregon. He had it with him just for filming that sketch. So I don't know where he got it. In my country, the real Celts worship the people who they killed and turned them into Irish-specific gods. To find it interesting, they kill them, worship them. That is, well, you guys are messed up. Yeah, those kinds of shows say things like evolution gave this bird a longer beak so it could reach into the ground and get its food. Yes, I love that. It's hilarious to me. That is such a nonsensical statement to say in any kind of scientific arena, and yet nobody ever calls them out on that. Random, but something I find interesting. Both Christians and atheists seem to enjoy the series Lucifer. I enjoyed the series Lucifer. A bad theology, but I thought it was cool. It was fun. The problem is that Lucifer is absolutely nothing like the devil, except that he's a good-looking guy. That's about it. But there's nothing in the Bible to show that Lucifer cares about justice, that he's actually the good guy working for God, right? That's not, and so that's because they're basically, here's the thing. People have this, where the myth of Lucifer came into play, is that people believe that in hell, Lucifer reigns, that he is in charge down there, torturing the suffering souls and all that. No. Hell is every bit as much a punishment to him as it is to anybody else. Hell is Lucifer's ultimate damnation, just like it is for any human that is condemned. And so there is no biblical support that Lucifer is in charge in hell. But people like to think that. Your beard is very well groomed this morning. Well, thank you, Cronus. I did brush it out just before this show. We no longer have the dodo bird. Should we blame anything for that? Yes, you should probably blame Bird o' Prey, because what happened was Bird o' Prey went back in time and ate all the dodo eggs because he found them delicious. The Greek, Roman, Hindu, etc. gods are just what you give me normal people. If you made normal people supernatural, but you see, that's the thing. If you have a species of, let's just say, genetically engineered super people, and they show up on Earth and they decide, hey, let's have some fun with these dicks, right? And you end up with the Greco-Roman gods, and they say, we've had enough here. Let's move up north, and they create the Nordic gods. That's entirely feasible. But yeah. So Rational Ranger, do you believe in the ancient alien theory? Well, first of all, I don't know the ancient alien theory. Or unless you're talking about specifically that ancient aliens made the pyramids, in which case, no. And if you say why, I would say there's no evidence to support said theory, and there's no way to test said theory, so it's not even a theory, it's a hypothesis at best. But if you want to suggest that ancient aliens built the pyramids, please show me the evidence. And don't just tell me, well, we couldn't make the pyramids today. And so, no, Mr. Miles, Stargate is not a documentary. But if ancient aliens made the pyramids, you should have some way to demonstrate that. Like let's say that Mr. Miles is suggesting, let's say the pyramids are actually giant landing platforms for their supermassive spaceships. Then why aren't all the pyramids the same size? Why aren't they perfectly spread around the world so that they can land on wherever they want to? And why is it that, it doesn't add up, right? So what is the purpose of the pyramids to an alien? Now, besides that, if you want to argue, well, these rocks are so big that we couldn't possibly move them, you know what? Are you sure? Or is it just that we couldn't do it today? Because here's the thing. You know what nobody does today? Break the backs of thousands and thousands of people to make them do work. Slavery on that kind of level is not a common practice. And so it's amazing what you can get done when the alternative is to die. And so, yeah. Rational Round 2, aka Anti-Trigger, please clarify this one. Does Lord Related claim to be a Christian? Well, first of all, I would say this. If you want to know what Lore Reloaded's beliefs are, you need to ask Lore Reloaded. I'm not going to speak for him as far as what he does or does not believe. The only thing I can tell you is that for a time he did go to the same church that I do. But he doesn't go there now. As for what he actually believes right now, you would have to ask him. I'm not going to speak for him. He's my friend, but I don't, I leave that to him. Look out, Auntie is sleeping. Yes, Auntie is sleeping. Well, kind of. Are you sleeping? I don't think she's completely sleeping. Live with Matthew says, also, it's interesting when you notice the Roman Catholicism is what you get when you cross Christianity with the Roman gods. Instead of unique gods, you have saints to pray to. Well, I think that's unfair to Catholics, Live with Matthew, because while I'm not an expert on Catholicism, I'm sure truly not, and I'm not a Catholic, you don't pray to the saints. You pray through the saints, if that makes any kind of sense. The idea, my understanding, and if I have any Catholics in the room, please correct me on this, but my understanding is that when you pray to Mary, for example, right? Hail Mary, full of grace, however it goes, right? When you pray to Mary, you are not praying to Mary as a god. You are asking Mary, petitioning Mary to please pray on your behalf to God the Father. And so that's the idea. And the idea of intercessory prayer, the idea of asking people to pray for you, is a biblical concept. The question is, can the saints do that for you? That's where Catholics and Protestants kind of part ways on that. So I don't think it's as simple as worshiping Mary. Although there are people that want to deify Mary, and those people I would put on that level. I don't think Mary should be deified because she was nothing but a human woman. Period. Chronos doesn't like going through windows. Okay. Valor says, in the books, 90% of the characters were white. The main characters are white. Okay. I don't know. I've never read the books. So, and let's see. And it looks like Piano Dean and Aberjam are thinking about doing collaboration, which, by the way, would be freaking awesome, because I think Aberjam, you need to be Piano Dean's personal lyricist. Holy crap, what a combination you guys could be. Speaking of which, Piano Deans, where's my theme song? Just messing with you. Dan says, you may get special discounts for medical reasons coming under the Disabilities Act. Do you think church people who belong to the church should get special discounts when in shops? Well, it depends. First of all, I don't get, I don't know as far as like who gives special discounts to people under the Disabilities Act. Because if so, where's my discounts? But anyway, I don't know about that. But as far as, do I think people who belong to a church should get special discounts when in shops? Well, if it's a shop, for example, if it's a Christian-owned store and they want to give discounts to Christians, they certainly have the right to do that. But should they? I don't know. It is a biblical point to suggest that Christians should be looking out for each other. So giving each other discounts, well, what they should be doing is giving each other goods and services for free, not a discount, but a zero discount, or a zero charge, I should say. Ms. Morris says, it'll be a minute until you see this, but you just said that you believe that the universe and God is billions of years old. So you believe that God had a start then? Well, I think that God has existed as long as there has been existence. Anti-Gur Ratarantabu, who wrote The Land of Plenty? Oh. Who wrote Land of Plenty? That would be Aberjam, actually. He wrote the song that plays at the beginning of most of my streams that, give a coin to your trucker. I can't sing that, but yeah. That was written by Aberjam, who is in the chat right now. Anyway, let's... Multi-Gunman says, I believe that when the Bible talks about the creation of the world, it's meant to be taken figuratively because God had to explain creation to us in a way we could understand at the time. I tend to think that way as well, Multi-Gunman. That being said, I understand there are people that insist that it is 100% literal, so yeah, we've got to get into that. But when it comes to the age of the earth, I can only point that Jesus treated Genesis 1 as a literal account of creation and fossil creation, and fossil creation lines up with global flood. Well, again, I'm not an expert on fossilization. I'm not an expert on the dating methods, but I do know that most of the time when creationists try to argue things like the strata effect from the flood or fast fossilization and stuff like that, generally speaking, the reaction from the scientific community is overall laughter. Now, here's the problem with that. One, I think that if somebody puts that as a genuine hypothesis, then disprove it. Don't just laugh it off, right? So if somebody says, I think the world's 6,000 years old, and I think that the flood demonstrates the fossil record through X, Y, and Z, come up with a way to disprove that. And don't say, well, we prove an evolution, therefore it disproves that. Because no, you cannot positively prove things in science. You can only disprove things. So what you need to do is come up with an effective test to disprove the young Earth and demonstrate it. That is honestly what I think the proper attitude is, not just laughing at people and saying how stupid they are because they think something different than you. My granddad said his grandparents were always said, if you ask God to save you, he sends the army. If you ask God to heal you, he has created the doctor. Don't rely on prayer alone. Well, there's some truth to that. Faith healers and stuff really get under my skin, because nowhere in the Bible does it say, by the way, if you get sick, don't bother going to the doctor. Nowhere in the Bible will you find that. But since Jesus is referred to as the great physician, they think, well, that means that literally if I get sick, that I need to have Jesus heal me. And, oh man, those drugs and doctors, they're evil. No. You know what? If you're schizophrenic, you need to take antipsychotic medication. You take the medication. You don't just say, well, Jesus will heal me. It's infuriating that people don't, if my car breaks down, I don't pray to Jesus to fix it. I go to the mechanic, right? Now, I might pray to Jesus about, oh my God, what am I going to do? I can't afford these repairs, but I'm not going to be praying to Jesus to fix the car, because I'm not expecting Jesus to miraculously fix the car. Pierre Dean says, everything's done but the vocals. Music sounds great. I can't wait to hear it. Peter says, personally, I don't know. Well, neither do I. Carlos says, if God made the universe 6,000 years ago, he could have made the past of the earth with it as the past of the earth with it as well, like a backstory in a book halfway through. Would we be able to tell the difference? Well, that's an interesting question. If God actually created the earth exactly 6,000 years ago, but created it with the backstory, as you say, then the earth is effectively just as old as the scientists say, so there's no conflict. And you might as well just say the earth is 14 billion years old, or not 14 billion, but however old the earth is. Because if the effectiveness is exactly the same, then take the simplest explanation. So radiometric dating has the same reliability issues that salt clock. Starting values can't be known. Rate of decay can be varied. Elements measured can leak back in. Well, here's the thing. And again, Life with Matthew, and don't get me wrong, I am not taking sides in this fight. But here's what I would argue. So, and I've heard that before. Okay, so here's some problems with radiometric dating. Find a way to prove that. Because all that, if you say that the problem is that this X is unreliable, then you need to demonstrate that X is unreliable. Darth Red says, and I started the Hobbit joke. Yes, jerk, I hate you for that one. Well, it starts, let's see. Well, it says to me the fossils are not planted by humans. Oh, if you find enough of them, yeah. But, you know, how do you know that, let's say that Joe's fossil shop had a cargo plane flying over the beach and the plane crashed and that's how the fossils got buried in the beach. How do you prove that's not true? Well, it would explain why Freddie Mercury could hit the high notes. Wait, so there's a planet that is watery that doesn't have a forest that is called Endor? Not sure what you mean there, Kronos, because here's the thing about Endor, right? I know they refer to it as the forest moon of Endor, but guess what? That planet had to have had oceans, right? You can't have a planet that is 100% forest because guess what? Those trees would die because there would be no water for them. All right, so having oceans on Endor makes perfect sense. As for, and the other thing is, I'm sorry, it would not be 100% forestation. There will be clearings and stuff. And you know what you do see in Rise of Skywalker? Yeah, you do see trees and you do see plains. There's nothing inconsistent about that. But not sure why we're even talking about that. Fun saying in genealogy, look at your hand now. Think of those that held it and loved it. You now think of those who loved them and held their hands. Shouldn't their names and story be told again? That's a nice sentiment. I like that. Mr. Mouse says, I'm not taking credit for the Frank and Freddy thing. I said you do get the credit for that, but it was I that set up the opportunity for you to do it. Gotcha. Okay. Lucifer is in Crisis on Infinite Earths. Yes, I knew about his cameo. Constantine has to get something from him. Yes, I like I said, I saw like a little clip of the cameo. I think it was someone sent it to me. Why has God not obliterated the devil and forgiven the souls? Are say dicks, not evil people. Well, Darth Revan, I need to just say. That's okay. That's really Joshua. All right. I would say this. You'd have to ask God that. Anytime, and I'm going to say that anytime somebody says, "Why didn't God do X?" Ask God. Don't know. Ronos, dang it, Rational Ranto. If you had a church, this is what I like. This I would attend. Well, thank you. Well, this is a church. In the very real sense, because all church is a gathering of people, right? And so a church is not a place, a church is not a building. And so now the difference is we discuss things back and forth, which is, we might fight a little bit even, but it is a church in a real sense. And, you guys tithe at about the same rate as most churchgoers, which is like practically none. So, we need to work on that, guys. Star Wars novels and comics and other books made since Disney took are canon. The novelizations of the films are not canon, I believe. Yeah, I don't take novelizations of films as canon anyway, because a lot of times they will directly conflict with what we see on film, and therefore the film is primary canon anyway. But yes. Let's see. Ancient Aliens is not a theory, it's a fantasy. Well, like I said, it's not a theory, it's a hypothesis at best. Do I think it's possible that there are aliens? Sure. Do I think it's possible the aliens built the pyramids? Sure, but you're going to have to demonstrate some evidence. You cannot get the rocks to look like you can't get those rocks that look like a snail shell. Okay. Not sure what you mean. Daniel Jackson solved the mystery of the pyramids. Well, I don't know who Daniel Jackson is. See. Mage says, I said I'd ask, can you understand why an atheist would find Christian beliefs hard to believe and nutty? Sure. I was an atheist for a substantial amount of time. So absolutely I can understand why Christians might look a little nutty to them. I understand that completely, and I don't think that they're bad people because they think I'm... Daniel Jackson from Stargate. I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Miles. I can't believe I did. But see, it says Danielle Jackson is what Kronos put. That's why it threw me off. Daniel Jackson, yes. Anyway, but as far as, yes, because you're saying, you believe in these things that I see zero evidence for, right? Just like I would say about people who believe in ancient aliens, or anything else, or M theory even, that people are believing in things for which there is no evidence, right? I can certainly understand why that might seem a little nutty. Now, the flip side of that is that I also think that you don't have to be disrespectful about it. Right. So while I don't believe necessarily that aliens built the pyramids, but I'm willing to have a conversation with someone about it. And if they want to say, well, here's the evidence, I would say, okay, but let me ask you this. This evidence is all circumstantial, or this is just anecdotal. I don't see any hard evidence that alien spacecrafts ever landed on the Earth or something. You know, we can have that discussion and I can take the person seriously instead of saying, oh, well, you're just stupid. You believe in aliens. You know, that's the difference. I don't mind that atheists disagree with theists. I would expect that. I don't mind that they might even think that theists are a little nutty for believing in something that they see there's no evidence to. But I do mind when people are mocking and basically just dicks about it, right? So we can have, as the name of this channel implies, a rational conversation about it, even if you don't think it's a rational subject. You don't have to be a dick about it just because you think it's silly. And that's where I draw the line with some atheists. Obviously, nobody on this channel. You guys have been wonderful. Even, Luke, unfortunately not here today, but when Luke is here, he's very challenging to everything I say. You guys know that, but he's not a dick about it. All right. So, and then there's a difference between, your attitude, and so I don't have a problem with that. That being said, I think that on the flip side, a big problem that Christians have is try to prove God. You need to give up on that battle. That's never going to happen. You're never going to prove God. You need to understand that experiencing God is a subjective experience, and therefore you can't share it with people directly. You can tell people your testimony, as it were. You can tell people what you believe God did for you and how God did it for you and why you feel that God is real in your life. But what you can't do is prove it. I think there are pyramids on every continent. On every continent. I don't know that there are there. Let's see. Are there pyramids in Europe? I mean, true pyramids? And there are definitely no pyramids in Antarctica that I know of, unless you watch the Alien versus Predator movie. You just woke Auntie. Oh, look, she's out again. If anyone ever asks you if I'm an atheist, you have my permission to say yes, and please don't tell them to come bother me with it. Well, Mr. Miles, we've talked about it before, and that's the funny thing is that obviously if I had a problem with atheists, Mr. Miles would be the last person that I would have working with me. And Mr. Miles is a full partner in the Anti-Tracker channel, right? So, he is definitely, he and I work together a lot. And you know what? I love the fact that we disagree on almost everything because that's what holds us in check. Right? We have we not only have differences from a theological perspective, we have a difference on creativity stuff. And whenever you see, that's one thing that pisses me off in Hollywood. We split over creative differences. Creative differences are what makes better art. All right? If you have everybody agreeing with each other, art sucks. And that's what you're seeing in Hollywood right now. Everybody's thinking the same way, and guess what? Star Wars sucks now. Star Trek sucks now. Having diversity of thought is more important than having diversity of skin color. I will say that for the record, 100%. It is more important that you have a diverse set of opinions than you have a diverse set of skin tones. But Hollywood doesn't see it that way. And so, that's a big problem. Well, me and Mr. Miles see differently on just about every aspect of the channel, and that's a good thing. Because we're not going to simply wholeheartedly go in one way without thought or conversation about it. Darth Maul says, where did the theory of Eve having a sister named Lilith come from, and do you know of her background? I don't know a lot about Lilith. It's a Jewish folklore, I know that. And so the best person to ask about Lilith would probably be a rabbi. How do you believe pyramids were made? Some scientists think aliens of anti-gravity technology involved. Well, personally, I believe that more than likely massive amounts of levers and I don't know what the proper term is, but simple wheels, simple machines. You know, the thing about simple machines is they work, right? And if you look at, you know, what's the old saying? Give me a big enough lever and a fulcrum and I can move the world. That is true. And if you have a slave labor force of thousands, if not millions of people, and you can manufacture big enough levers and hoists and pulleys and stuff like that, then guess what? Yes, you could build the pyramids. And the funny thing is you might think, well, but what about all the incredible cranes and scaffolds and stuff that would be required? Gone with the ages, gone, you know, just disintegrated to dust. But the pyramids are still there. I don't think that it was aliens, quite frankly. But show me some evidence it was aliens, and I'm good with that. Actually, they were not slaves. They discovered city of builders with doctors, and they also had healed bones, and they were healed. That doesn't mean they weren't slaves. That just means that they had health care. But, I mean, that doesn't... just saying that they had doctors, I mean, if I have a plantation and one of my slaves breaks their bone and I have a doctor come set the bone, does that mean he's not my slave? No. You know, so... yeah, I don't buy that. I pray to God through Jesus Christ. That's good. Yeah, that's actually something you're supposed to do. By the way, as far as because on the slave thing, I mean, here's the thing, and if you read the Bible, it talks about this, that the slaves at the point of the Exodus, the slaves outnumbered the Egyptians. And that was, and so if your slaves are that numerous, yeah, you're going to want to give them doctors and food and stuff, because if you don't, they're going to revolt. And there's more of them. It's basically like, hey, put good word in for me, because it's basically like, hey, put in a good word for me, not as God, I'm Catholic. Yeah. The Bible pretty clear that saints cannot perform intercessory prayer. There is one God and one mediator between God and man, Jesus Christ. Well, I'm not going to argue with that, Matthew, but I'm also not going to speak for the Catholic Church. I'll let Catholics do that. Darth Vader says, in the Catholic Church, Mary is called Our Lady, the Virgin Mary, Queen of Heaven, Mother of God. Yeah, and I don't, you know, calling her Mother of God because she happened to give birth to Christ, okay, but Queen of Heaven? Where'd that come from? Because last time I checked, she wasn't God's wife. Russia and Oz too, Russia. I knew about the African Americas and European pyramids. Well, I don't know about Russia and Australia, but I'm pretty confident that there are no pyramids in Antarctica. But are they pyramids? But here's the thing, Peter. Are they the same design everywhere? No. You look at an Aztec pyramid, it looks very different than an Egyptian pyramid. So since you know the fact that you had these different societies come up with pyramid-shaped buildings, that's a coincidence. If they all looked exactly the same, then I might say, there's some common thread here. Pianine, how do you feel about Catholics calling the Pope Your Holiness? After all, he's human, man, who is no more holy than anyone else. I don't like it. That is one of my big beefs with the, and actually, it's not just the Your Holiness. It's calling was it bishops or whatever cardinals. I think you call your eminence, and all that. They all have their titles, all the way down to a priest being father. And I disagree with that. You know, the whole kissing of the ring, calling the Pope holy. The Pope is a man, and nothing more. And so, I don't dig that at all. Granted, it's all pomp and circumstance, but they take it very seriously. If they didn't take it that seriously, I might not have a problem with it. Berta Prey says, I never heard of a disability discount. Yeah, me neither. Aridan says, to or through, it's unbiblical to try and contact God through the dead. Scripture calls it witchcraft or divination, and it outright condemns it. RC Dogma also calls Mary the co-redeemer. Well, I don't know about the as far as what the Roman Catholic dogma is saying Mary is a co-redeemer, and because I'm not a Catholic, okay? Like I said, I'm not judging the Catholic Church because I'm not Catholic, but, you know, I think that there are some questions there for sure. As far as Scripture calling it unbiblical to contact God through the it does say, you know, to consult with spirits and stuff is wrong, right? But that being said, there's also scriptural passages to suggest that the saints are in heaven praying to God. So, you know, you can find scriptures to point both ways. And I try to, I don't, you know, I know it's funny because the term dogma is actually a Catholic term, but I don't believe in dogma. Dogma is the idea that this is true no matter what, and there's no discussion on it. I don't believe in dogma. Aberjam, where's my theme song? Hey, Andrew, where's my Hulk video? It's been a year. I know. Trust says, great live stream today. Some good look back and forth. Actually, yeah, I agree. I love the fact that a lot of you guys are talking back and forth on some of this stuff that I'm not even involved in the conversation. So that's freaking awesome. You guys, I mean, you guys inspire me. You really do, because it's cool to see that we built a community here, and we're going to continue to build a community here, both on the Anti-Trekker channel and here. So I love that fact. And as both channels grow, I'm really looking forward to the potential future of both. Like, I think that going back to when I started this live stream, talking about the vision of the future of these channels, if we get to that point, if we grow to that point where this is me and Miles' full-time jobs, one of the things I want to do is a daily Bible study on this channel, right? So like every morning, first thing I do in the morning will be to do a quick live stream on this channel and talk for you guys for a few minutes about stuff, whatever and maybe go through a passage of the Bible, break it down or something. Then work on videos and stuff through the day, do my evening live stream on the Anti-Trekker channel, and that would be a typical day for me. That's what I want, ultimately. That would make a perfect day. So, yeah. Resolute says, I wouldn't suggest giving discounts based on religion because it would inevitably lead to a lawsuit. But why? Here's the thing, Resolute. So if I say, hey, you know what? I go to the Experience Community Church. Anybody from the Experience Community Church comes into my store and I'll give them whatever they want. It's my store. I have the right to do that. You can't sue me for giving somebody something. So that's not, you know, there's no lawsuit in the world that could win that, because I have the right, the constitutionally guaranteed right to practice my religion. And if my religious beliefs are that if I own a business, I give people of common belief with me my product or service for free, I have the right to do so, guaranteed by the Constitution of the United States. As long as that right doesn't infringe on others, there's nothing you can do. Carla says, when I went to college, I went to a Christian cafe that would give you free drinks if you said, please, thank you, and were just being kind, but didn't advertise it. I asked them when noticed. Oh, okay, that's cool. Yeah, I'm one of those enclosed creationist, young earth, biblical literalist folks, but hopefully I'm one of the cool ones. Yeah, well, because you're not a dick about it. I believe that the very least Bible is a historical book. There is history in the Bible, but you got to be careful to not say that the Bible is a historical book, because the Bible is a collection of a lot of books. Some are historical, some are poetic, and you got to know the difference. Science does have ways of disproving young earth. Okay, demonstrate. I'm down with that. I'm sure, you know what, Darren Wagner, you know, you might think he's crazy for believing in a young earth, right? But you know what? If you could prove to him that he's wrong, I think he would accept that. So do it. Instead of just saying science has ways of doing it or science has done it, do it. Jesus arrives in a dirty jumpsuit to fix your car because he's Mexican. Well, Jesus. The funny thing is, I've actually been watching a really interesting miniseries on Netflix called Messiah, which I think is a fairly... I'm only 3 episodes in. I don't know where the show is going. It would be called blasphemy by the end of the show. But at least so far, it's, I think, a fairly realistic take on how would people react if Jesus came back today. 4.3 billion years, allegedly. Thank you. Christian created the carbon dating technology that stands behind it until the Shroud of Turin, wrapped supposedly buried, and comes up with then he abandons his carbon tech. Well, I don't know about that. I'm just saying that if you know what, you're gonna, the problem is that most people can't prove that, for example, they just know, well, carbon dating proves it. Well, then somebody says, well, carbon dating is unreliable. And then they say, well, sure it is. And then they say, well, no, it's not. And that's the end of the discussion, because neither one of them can demonstrate their positions. The one who says it's not reliable can't prove it's unreliable. And the one that says it is reliable can't prove it is reliable. End of discussion. Radiometric decay has been proven to be based on solar activity as well as issues like acidic rain. I don't know that that's true, Live with Matthew, but if you can prove that, great, prove it. I personally think radiometric dating is a sham, but then I also think psychology is pseudoscience. Well, psychology is interesting. I think that there are, because here's the thing, it's demonstrably true, the people suffer from various mental conditions that can be helped through various psychosomatic drugs, antipsychotics and such. I have some people in my family with mental illness, and they have been helped greatly by these drugs. And so I don't believe that it is pseudoscience. That being said, I think that everything coming back to blame it on your parents or everything is about sex, yeah, that's pseudoscience. Well, we can prove that there wasn't a plane crash, no wreckage, no scorch marks. Well, you can only prove there wasn't a recent plane crash. Because guess what? I'll bet you where the United flight whatever went down 50 years ago, there's no scorch marks or wreckage anymore. The Death Star wreck is on neighbor planet to Endor. Star Wars Theory showed it from a visual dictionary. Well, you know what? Here's the problem with that visual dictionary. It's not canon if it predates the sequel trilogy. And so that doesn't matter. And even if it is first of all, it would be more likely that it would be on a neighboring moon, not a neighboring planet. Because if it was on a neighboring planet, it would take probably hundreds of years to get there. Is Josh all right? Yes, I'm just helping Josh with some stuff as soon as I'm done with this live stream. Do you think God has an equal? No, I think that is actually a ludicrous statement. Not because of my personal religious beliefs, because God with a capital G, as you correctly put in that question, would be the omnipotent creator of the universe. You cannot have more than one omnipotent being. It is not possible. Here's my 10% of my money. Wait for it. Okay. Waiting. I just had to do this at church. Shut up, Wesley. Jeff Raines said, what? You don't know who Daniel... No, it said Danielle Jackson. That's why that's what threw me off. It said Danielle Jackson, and I didn't even think about Daniel Jackson, but yeah. All right, you owe me $100. No, it doesn't work that way. I don't know who Daniel Jackson is. No, it was Danielle in the chat, so shut up. Danny Jackson, the archaeologist and linguistics start. Yeah, I understand that now, but it was put in the chat originally as Danielle, and I did not catch that. It didn't process right. If God exists, there's so much to lose not believing in God. However, if God doesn't exist, you lose nothing believing in God. That's true. That's what's the name? That's what's the name of that wager? But that's an old argument about Pascal's wager. The problem with Pascal's wager is while it's true, it's only partially true because what about other iterations of God, right? So, for example, if the Muslims are correct, then Christians are screwed, as are atheists, right? If Christians are correct, then Muslims are screwed, as are atheists. You see what I'm saying? So there's more. It's not just a simple binary of God, if God exists versus if God doesn't exist. There's also the question of, is there a specific path to God? That's why, in the Bible, Christ says, I am the way, the truth, and the light. None get to the Father except through me. And so that is showing an exclusivity to Christianity. And so that does mean that as a Christian, I cannot say, well, good Muslims are going to heaven. But what I can say is I don't think that getting into heaven is based on your religion. It's not based on whether or not you call yourself a Muslim or a Christian or a Jew or a Hindu or whatever. It has to do with, are you repentant of your sin? Do you accept Christ as your Savior? That kind of stuff. Now, if you are a Jew and you did those things, then it doesn't matter that you call yourself a Jew. You can call yourself a Pastafarian if you love that joking religious term, and yet if you actually genuinely do those things, that's what God cares about. He cares about your heart, not about what card you're carrying. Darth Ren says, Mr. Miles, watch this. He won't answer. Rash Lorenzo, do you think what happened in the cafe in SG1 with Daniel was the right idea? Do I think what happened in the cafe in Stargate with Daniel was the right idea? Well, here's the problem with that, Darth Revan. You say, I won't answer. It's more like I'm trying to think of the context there. You're being purposefully vague. So I don't sure. I mean, are you talking, if it's from SG1, which episode? You need to tell me what happened to him in order for me to properly answer. So don't give me a loaded question like that. And by the way, Mr. Miles actually sent me a side mark saying, yeah, it didn't make any sense to me either. So yeah, you got to provide context for a question like that. Corona says, I hate snow. You want some? I would love some snow. I absolutely adore snow, and I've never lived anywhere where we got a lot of it. No true pyramids in Europe. Okay, well, I've never seen any, but, I'm fine with it. Antarctica, that's the only one that we know of that doesn't have a pyramid. Well, we just heard there's no pyramids in Europe. And the thing is, they're not the same everywhere you go. So there's nothing to link the pyramids of all the different continents. Now, I know some people argue that some of the pyramids in South America line up with some of the pyramids from Egypt, and maybe that's true, maybe that's not. I don't know. I haven't studied it. But the architecture of the pyramids around the world are different everywhere you go. And then some of them, like the ones that people in Asia refer to as pyramids, barely resemble pyramids. I like the idea that we came from Mars and escaped before the atmosphere was destroyed and came to Earth. However, I don't believe it. It's just good thought of survival. You know what I've heard some people, an interesting idea is that Mars was actually the Garden of Eden, and when the flood was the destruction of Mars. I thought that's an interesting idea. I don't believe that there's need to prove God. Romans 1 states that everyone knows that God exists, but suppresses that truth to give support to those who do likewise. I do believe that people deep down, because it's the old saying, there's no atheists in foxholes. I think there's some truth to that. But people will never admit it, of course, till they're in the foxhole. Writing this 15 minutes early so you should get it while I'm still listening. Off to church. Have a great rest of the stream. Free Aberjam. Yes, absolutely. We need to free Aberjam. Thank you, my friend. And if you've already left, I'm sorry. In Trek, since they wear jumpsuits, they all have to get naked when they pee and poop. Unless they have some kind of magic transporter toilet that works like the magic metal detector transporter, so it just transports your poop out of your bowels. That said, I also think telling an atheist this is a pointless argument, and must have missed the part 1 of that. Oh, I don't believe that. Oh, no need to prove God. Yes. That said, I also don't think that telling an atheist is pointless argument and just trying to avoid trying to prove God's existence. Well, I don't think that talking to atheists is pointless at all. But I think trying to say, well, therefore, that proves God, that just ends the conversation. Confirmed, Anti-Drinker owns plantations. No, I don't, but I do live in the South. Darther says, again, they were not slaves. They were paid in beer and barely have, and I assume you mean barley, and have their payment scrolls, workers' names, and inside the pyramids, they said worker under the name of Khufu. Okay. All right, Darth. You want to say that they didn't have slaves. You say they didn't have slaves, but I would dare say that history is not on your side on that one. If Jesus was born today, would Mary Me Too God? Good question. If Mary was in Hollywood, she would. The pyramids were constructed using ramps and bearing the structure as they completed a level approximately the height of the average worker in Egypt at the time. I tend to agree with that, but I know a lot of people think it had to have been done by aliens. They think that a pyramid was trying to replicate a mountain. I think it was creating a great monument to the people that built it. Hey, where's my Trigun video? I know. I got so... You guys, those of you that sent me movies and stuff, I know I got to get to them, and I'm way behind. I mean, I don't know how I'm going to get any of these reviews done once I get back to work. Some people believe that Face on Mars, even though it's been disproven by technology, is proof of NASA lying about it being real. It's just some are nuts. Well, some people are nuts. I'll agree with you on that. Saints in heaven speaking to God on our behalf. Citation, please. I'll check the stream when I get home. Abergem, I'm saying if you read Revelation, it does mention that the saints are in heavens petitioning God. Right? I'm not saying people are praying to those saints. I'm saying that the saints are displayed in heaven petitioning to God, asking, when is our time? And then God answers their prayers. But that's not saying that the Catholic dogma is true. I'm losing my religion. That's me in the spotlight. Guys, just so you know, I am going to wrap it up here in just a couple of minutes. So I may not get to your chat if you're leaving it now. So... just to warn you. LOL, no you don't, National Roundtable. Religion isn't a protected class. You cannot legally discriminate based on religion. But you know as well as I do, Bird, that applies to the government itself and government contractors. That if an individual business wants to give preferential treatment to people who are part of their special group, they have the right to do so. Jeff says, I give up. No, don't give up. Valor says there is a bakery that is willing to make same-sex couple cake but wouldn't write something that they didn't believe in and was sued for discrimination. Yes, and that lawsuit should have been escalated all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States. But it didn't. Because those people, like if you're talking about the bakery in Oregon, basically the entire community rose up against the bakery. It wasn't that they were sued that ran them out of business. The community ran them out of business because nobody wanted to give them their business anymore because they had the audacity to stand up for their own beliefs. And by the way, if you're going to argue that a bakery can't discriminate, then they can't discriminate. And if I wanted to walk into that bakery and say, give me a pro-KKK cake or give me a pro-Nazi cake or something like that, then they could not say no. But you know what? The funny thing is, nobody's going to make that argument. Nobody. Polygamy is part Mormon's religion. Don't infringe on anyone's rights, but still wasn't allowed to do it. And by the way, I disagree with that. I think that polygamy, unless the federal government has a compelling reason, there's no reason that polygamy should be illegal. There's absolutely no reason that it should be illegal. And I think that those laws are, quite frankly, unconstitutional. It's been good in theory, but been shot down in the state as discrimination. I understand. And, it's funny because we get into, is it discriminatory to give something to someone who's part of your group, right? Is it discriminatory? And that's, and because I know even, Bird's saying side, no, it's discrimination because businesses can't just, serve. I'm not saying a business can't, if a business puts no blacks allowed, right, on the door. No, obviously that's discriminatory. You can't do that. However, if I own, Anti-Trekkers poop shop and people come in and they buy poops and I'm selling poops all day long. But someone from my church comes in and I say, hey, how you doing, Joe? Here you go. Have a poop for free. You cannot sue me for that because I didn't infringe on anybody's rights. You can still walk in and buy a poop all you want. But you know what else is bogus and completely wrong? Is that if you come in and say, I want a gay poop and you have to make it for me. No, I don't. I don't have to make any product other than what I sell. And yet, that's the point we're getting to. We're getting to the point where right-think is becoming more important to people than rights. And that is scary to me. When we start saying bakeries have to advertise an image that they find offensive, but don't have to if it's something that agrees with a political agenda, the First Amendment is dead. Giving a discount to one religion is the same as charging more for another. You can't say Catholics pay 20% more any more than you say Presbyterians pay 20% less. All right, then, you know what? What about the if you, I don't know what grocery store you have in your area, the Kroger Club card or the Safeway Club card, anybody in that club can get these discounts on all these products, and yet if you don't have the club card, you got to pay more. Is that discrimination? Ah, yes, Messiah. I'm going to start that next week. Actually, it's an interesting show. What does the Christ actually mean? It literally means the anointed one. The one example of the number of geological layers, it doesn't give us an accurate date, but it does show the Earth is much older than what young Earth creationist beliefs claim. All right, so here's the thing. Please demonstrate the geological layers. You know what, just saying, that's the problem. You're not going to prove it in a conversation, number one. You need to practically take someone out and prove it. And I guarantee you, you don't know how to do that. You might say, well, look at those lines. Okay, what do they mean? Well, they're different. They're different eras. Each line is sediment that came down over thousands of years. How do you know that? Well, because I read it in a book. I mean, seriously, how do you know that? You don't know it. You're assuming that based on what you see or because of you read it somewhere. And that's the problem. That's where these arguments always ultimately fall down. It's that nobody is willing to actually put up or shut up. They'll just say, this is what it is because this is what it is. That Gollum lookalike Greta Thunberg got caught that her father writes all her speeches. She don't write anything at all. I don't know anything about Greta Thunberg. I don't care about Greta Thunberg. I don't want to care about Greta Thunberg. I've heard enough about her to know that I don't want to know. Carlos says, it's hard and expensive to do carbon dating, showing the Earth is round, how the layers in the atmosphere are. We need to trust and understand the work scientists have done. Okay, so you want to appeal to authority, but I can just as easily say, you know what? It's hard and expensive to go around and prove all the various things in the Bible, so we just have to accept that the church and the work that they've done. Same thing. And if you want to say, but science isn't religion, you're right. They're two different things. But you know what? We're just asking for faith. We're just asking for you to trust the work that, by the way, do you know what faith means, Carlo? Literally, it means trust. So you are literally asking me to have faith in scientists. Okay. Well, I'm asking you to have faith in God. Radiometric dating as independent dating methods can be cross-referenced with each other for accuracy. It's not all about one thing. Mage, I've heard people say things like that. And again, you guys know I'm not a young Earth creationist, but I have never seen anyone flat out demonstrate it. I've just heard people say things like that. And just because there are different dating methods and you can say all day long that they can be cross-referenced with each other for accuracy, fine. Show me. Don't just tell me. You need to show me. I send you a link to accredited scientific papers discussing radiometric decay is affected by solar activity. It's not just in chat since I don't have a wrench. That may be Life with Matthew, but here's the thing. You're asking me, and again, don't take me wrong here. This is not a fight that I have a dog in. I don't care. All right. Personally, I don't think that the age of the universe has any bearing on whether or not God exists. By the way, Kronos Dana, $10 says, you really love faith of the heart. Thank you, Kronos. Thank you for your tithe. Kronos is the one person going to heaven because he was willing to tithe. So good job, Kronos. And you guys know I'm just kidding about that. But the problem is that, if you send me an accredited scientific paper showing that radiometric decay is affected by solar activity, someone else is going to send me an accredited scientific paper that says that radiometric decay is not affected by solar activity. And I don't know what to do because you know what? I probably couldn't understand either paper because I'm not a scientist and I'm certainly not a specialist in radiometric decay. I think kids these days are vastly over-medicated. I tend to agree that we over-medicate, but that doesn't mean that all psychological sciences are pseudoscience. I just think that, but some aspects of it are. Like when we talk about transsexualism, you guys know that I believe, and I truly believe that transsexualism is a delusion. It is the delusion that you are not the gender that you are, right? It's the same thing as Napoleonic syndrome. For those of you that don't know, it used to be that people would always joke about people who thought they were Napoleon. It's all over the old cartoons like Bugs Bunny and stuff. People would think they were someone they were not, right? It's a delusion. Now, I think that transsexualism specifically is a similar delusion. So what do we do to combat that delusion? Do we help the people have psychiatric treatment and everything so that they can come to recognize what they truly are and accept what they truly are? No. We encourage the delusion and tell people to chop off their genitals and re-stitch them back together to match what they think they are. And then we want to fight over what bathroom they use. Howdy, Rational Roundtable believers and heathens. Can't stay but one to drop a like, and everyone hope this is noodly appendage touches your heart. Ramen. Chrono says, please say the word plaid. I just did. And yes, I am not, or as opposed to plaid, which, by the way, a plaid is an article of clothing, but plaid is a color. This is very interesting. I would say I should come, I should have some guests once in a while, like have Darren talk about flat earth. That's one thing I do want to do, Wesley, once I get going full time, because that would be something I would then have time to do. Carlos says you have to take into account how solar activity, environmental changes, and other activities effectively change things over hundreds of thousands of years. That's great, but I'm not the one to do that. But the problem is, and this is the problem, the dogma in both, there's dogma in religion that I'm against. There's also dogma in science that I'm against. Because you know what? If somebody wants to introduce this as a concept, that's fine. But the rest of the scientific community, rather than laugh them off, needs to take it seriously and disprove it. That's what science does. If Muslims are correct, then they might be screwed. One of their beliefs is that you can live perfectly and still be rejected by Allah. Well, I'm not a Muslim, so I'm not going to make a statement like that, Matthew. I don't speak for Islam. You never got that far into Stargate to get to the diner. Oh, I must not have. I may be surrounded by insanity, but I'm not insane, and nothing you or anyone can say will change that. Yeah, but you're still insane. The Ancients Writing Room Cafe after Daniel Jackson died for the umpteenth time during the final battle with Apophis. Yeah, I don't know that one. Must not have gotten there. I wonder who here in the chat will catch that first, because I doubt Anti-Checker will know it from memory. Oh, what, your insanity thing? Yeah, not me. I can't believe that you can possibly love snow. Roundtable. Cold makes more money to survive. I'd rather have the AC running. Well, here's the thing. Cold takes more money to survive if you're using oil or gas or something like that. But what about wood? If you live in a heavily wooded area, you cut down a tree, you burn it. I saw a great video talking about how there are so many historical sites, you can grab a number of them and have them lined up to point somewhere significant. Ivan Matthew, again, you're making the same mistake that the scientists are. Pointing me to an article or pointing me towards someone else's writing is just telling me to take faith in that person. That's not demonstrating an argument. That's the problem. Nobody's willing to actually do the groundwork, the footwork to actually prove it. What we need, and this would be an interesting thing to do, you get a flat earther who, or not a flat earther, but a young earth creationist who truly believes in some of these scientific ideas that we're talking about. And then you take a, quote unquote, legit scientist who believes in the old earth and all that, right? You make a documentary following the two of them attempting to prove to each other one way or the other, and you see where it goes. That would be interesting, because you know what? You and I having this conversation as lazy people is meaningless, because you're going to say, this guy over here says this is true, and then someone says, well, this guy over here says this is true. Either way, it's a he said, she said. All you're doing is telling me that someone else said this is true. That means nothing to me. That's hearsay. Toilets on Starfleet ships get flushed into waste recycle to go into the replicators. Well, I'm glad I'm not in Starfleet. That's kind of gross. Let's see. Sorry, the split text made it confusing. Didn't mean to say no point in talking about it. No. I got you. I've been researching the idea that Egyptian pyramids were Tesla-style power plants. Okay. Peeps send you movies. Nice. Yes, but not always nice because Alexander sent me a Barbie movie. Can you be Christian and believe science is the search for God? I think so. I am. How did they build the pyramids? They had whips, massive whips. That's true. Carlo, night, all have fantastic day, morning, evening, thanks. All right, Carlo, take it easy. Blue Darter says, glory be to God, amen. Chrono says, sorry. For what? It's not easy being white. Well, you really shouldn't sell poops. And then sorry. No, you don't need to apologize for making silly comments. What's your take on global warming? Well, we talked about that earlier. I think that there's a debate to be had about man's influence on global warming, but global warming is an absolute fact. And it's not like some doom and gloom thing. It's the fact that we are coming out of an ice age. And if you don't know what an ice age is, we are in one. And so when you come out of an ice age, guess what? Temperature goes up. Carlos says, back to the first question of the stream I asked about since and God does. Let's see. Back to the first question of the stream I asked about since and God. One does not have to science and God. One does not have to disprove the other. They can't. Are you watching the Titans in a few hours? I am planning on it if I can. Chrono says, preach it. Yes, I'm excited about the Titans going into the finals. That's very exciting. Antrager, can you award us a comedy award comment of the day? Poop credits. I don't know if I could do that. That would be a lot of work. Maybe once I'm doing this full time. It's cheaper to run the AC compared to the heating of the house. Oily. Well, it depends on where you live and what you use. Barry makes movies? Apparently, yes. How can anything be proven? If I provide a paper describing in detail these experiments were carried out and reproducible, you reject it as too technical, and then provide a summary and say that it isn't technical enough, we need someone to do the groundwork, then you're arguing both ways. No, I'm saying that a paper is just a paper, all right? What you need to do, and like I said, I think the interesting thing to do would be to take someone who believes in what you're suggesting, right? Someone wants to take a young earth position and they argue that the science bears them out. You take that person and then you take another scientist that says old earth and you let the two of them hash it out until one of them, or until they agree. That's what I'm saying. But no, you're never going to convince me because I'm not a scientist, and to me, it's not important. That's the thing. And I know some people think it's vitally important. I think that the argument over the age of the earth is completely irrelevant because it's nothing to do with salvation. It's nothing to do with whether God exists. It's just an argument over whether or not this scientific principle is true or not. And you know what? I don't care. Now, if I was if I was a scientist, I might care. If I was a young earth creationist, I might care. But quite frankly, I think that's the biggest problem with the young earth creationist movement is that they're trying to prove something that everybody else in the world is just looking at them saying, what are you talking about, man? It doesn't make any sense. I understand that they're passionate about this, but I also understand that it is it's an unimportant argument. What's more important in life with Matthew? How old the earth is, or whether people have a saving faith in Jesus Christ? What's more important? Because I would say the latter. This is very interesting, but I think I'm going to get started with my stream at 12 Central. All right, well, in that case, you're going to start in about 4 minutes, and that's fine because I'm almost caught up, and I'm going to wrap it up. You aren't a scientist, unsubbing, sorry. Come on, man, share the YouTube time. I'm trying to wrap it up, Wesley. See? That's it. I'm done. We're caught up, so I'm done. That's it. Guys, I actually did have a blast today. It was a lot of fun, but I do have things to do. Auntie's got to go for a walk. I got to help Joshua get his microphone set up. We got stuff to do. So, with that, I am going to wrap it up, and thank you all. Go hang out with Wesley. He's going to do his live stream in a few minutes. And, if I don't know if I'm going to stream again later today. Probably not. I got too much to do, and I'm going to try to catch some of the Titans game. Take care.
You son of a bitch, anti-tracker!